días a todos, a
Good morning,
todas,
everyone.
compas, hermanos y hermanas, los que estamos aquí
To all
presentes.
of our ladies, gentlemen, all our peers, and everyone that is watching via Zoom
Esta
or
segunda
via
jornada,
YouTube.
segundo día
In
de
the
la primera
second
mañana,
day,
vamos a hacer varios
and
puntos
during the
para
morning,
finalizar con la
we
declaración
will work on
de
many points to conclude with the
estos 2 días de
declaration
consulta. Para empezar,
of these 2 days
vamos a
where we've
moderar
had consultations.
del
To
sitio.
begin, we'll moderate.
Una,
Naima
la
from City
prensa.
will moderate, and
Estaremos en la
Uma
moderación de la primera
from
mañana.
fishing industry, we
Y partiendo de
will
este
be
punto,
moderating during the morning,
damos
and
la palabra a Duca
we're
para
going to
que
leave you now, give
nos
the floor to
amplíe
Duca
sobre el programa final
for
anotado
her
para
to
la
talk about
conferencia
the
en
final
Guyana el
program,
día
the final
18
agenda for the
de
conference in
marzo. Si
Guyana, for
quiere,
her to tell us
empezamos.
all these points she mentioned yesterday.
Un poquito más. Tienes 5 minutos, Duca, por favor.
You have
Gracias.
5 minutes, Duca, please.
Ok, buenos días.
Okay, good morning.
La intención del día de ayer mencionar que les 11 puntos
Yesterday,
era confusión,
I
sino
mentioned
explicar
11 points, and I did not want it to I did not want to confuse you, but
Ahí ven
anyway,
la
I'll comment on
pantalla
these again.
compartida y
I'm
antes
sharing my
quiero
screen
lo
now,
que quiero
and
enseñarles
what
es
I wanted to show
que
you
entre ay,
is that
espera. ¿Ah? Aquí. Sí, yo sé. Bueno, ahora sí. Bueno, entonces, si ustedes entran en el sitio web,
if you go into the website and look
les va a abrir
for the FAO Regional Conference, this website will
esa
show up.
página. Y aquí al ladito tiene la lista de
And
documentos.
right here, you have the list of documents in the side.
Entonces, cuando ustedes van a la lista de documentos, aquí están
So
todos
when you
los
go
documentos
into the
que vamos a
document
utilizar como
list,
base para la
you'll see all the
conferencia.
documents that will be used
Y entre
as
ellos,
grounds
yo
or
creo
as a
que ustedes ya
basis
han
for the
recibido cuáles
conference.
son los
I think you've
resultados del
received 2
FAO
of these, which are the FAO
y las
results
prioridades
in
del
the
FAO
region
para el próximo
and the FAO's
gobierno.
priority for the next bienniums. The
Y las
the
prioridades
results
para
of the
ahora,
prior year and or the prior
aquí
biennium
ustedes van
and
a ver
the
varios
results
documentos.
for the
Uno de
future.
ellos es el
Now,
calendario
you'll see
provisional.
many documents
¿Ya?
among which
Después
we
hay
can have the
algo
provisional
que está en
calendar.
inglés, pero voy en español.
And, well, it's in
Después vamos a ver
English
aquí
here.
dice
I'm
la
going to go to
agenda de
Spanish.
lo que se va a discutir en la conferencia.
That is the agenda of
Entonces
what
aquí
will be
ustedes
discussed in
pueden
the
ver del día
conference.
11 al día 13 de marzo es la
It's
reunión
from
de
March
altos oficiales
11th,
superiores.
from 11th
¿Ya?
until from March 11th
El día
until the
13
13th
es la
is
reunión
the
virtual
meeting
de
of higher
exposición
officers.
de
We'll have a
ese
virtual meeting,
padecimiento,
and then
¿no? Primero,
here are the
algunas
points
cosas
for discussion.
protocolares, ¿no? Que no requiere y además ustedes
Many
van
of
a
these things
participar
are
por
just for
una
protocol. You'll
información.
participate,
Pero
it's
luego
just
viene aquí, mira,
information, right?
eh,
But here
perspectivas mundiales regionales de
at
la
11, we have the global
esa
and
pequeña
regional
ejemplo,
perspectives
¿ya?
of food
Viene
security and
aquí
nutrition. There's something
y
quite
tiene una hoja.
generic and
Tenemos
broad,
el debate y luego
and
ustedes van a ver aquí los resultados del bien
we will
anterior
later see the
y
results of the
luego
prior
las
biennium
prioridades de la FAO, ¿ya?
and then
Estos
the
dos
FAO's
documentos son los
priorities.
documentos que guían
These
toda la
2
dinámica de
documents
la
are the
conferencia,
guiding
tanto los
documents for the
resultados
entire
del bien
conference,
anterior
both
de la
the
FAO
results of the
y
prior
las
biennium
prioridades.
and the
Después,
priorities.
los propios países, desde julio
After
del año
that,
pasado, venimos discutiendo con
all
ellos
countries since
y
July
nos
last
piden
year,
para
we've been
hacer
discussing,
algunas
right? And
sesiones más
some
focalizadas.
countries have
Muchas de
asked
esas
us to
sesiones
have more focalized
focalizadas
sessions.
está fuera de esos dos documentos que son los
And
documentos principales y
it's
que
outside of these 2
nortean
documents, which are the 2
forman
main
toda la
documents,
discusión de la
which
conferencia.
are the
Pero
north
son
for
agendas
or the guide
específicas
for our conference, but there are
solicitadas
specific
por
agendas
los miembros,
requested
los países miembros. Entonces, por
by member
ejemplo,
countries.
aquí tiene uno que se llama
For example,
financiamiento
here you
para
have one
acabar
that's
con el
called
hambre,
funding to end hunger,
¿cierto? Entonces, cuando yo les
right? So
mencioné aquí las temáticas
when I showed you the
la
themes
otra vez,
here,
no sé si lo
the agenda
olvidé,
topics,
entonces aquí tienen los
right?
resultados,
Yesterday,
las prioridades
you have the
y
results
luego
here, the
tiene
priorities,
financiamiento para acabar con
and
el
then it
hambre.
says
Porque
funding
es
to
un
end
tema
hunger.
que os van a abordar, va a haber
It's a topic that they will address. They'll have a quite rapid presentation, and then we'll open the floor for the countries to discuss that. After that, as you see here, on 13th of March, you have the conclusion of the day and then some debate. And then on Wednesday, we'll talk about other topics like how to fight against the food waste through technological innovation. All these topics are here in the PowerPoint that presentation that I showed you yesterday. Those are the topics that the country said. Okay, we have our biennium priorities, but we want to discuss these other topics a bit more. That's why there's sessions where the countries sometimes show what they're doing in terms of the topic. It's just display, information exchange. But there's always a plenary later where one can comment, etc. Not everything that's discussed in that session will end up in the final report conference. That's a suggestion for us to work in a priority for the as a priority for the agenda. It's just an exchange more than anything else. And I think that's why it's a bit confusing because I listed these 11 topics because they're the topics that you'll see here in these agendas. And from March 18th until the 21st is a ministerial session. And you'll see that at the beginning of this session, for the first time, we'll have the declaration of civil society organizations at the beginning. You'll present a declaration through if you'll present a declaration through the spokesperson, and you'll do that at the beginning of the session, right? Along with the private session, the president of the Global Committee on Food Security with the parliamentarians and the scientific committee too, academic scientific committee. And then you can see all those topics. I think it's a bit clearer to you now, right? There's nothing that is not within the priorities that you discussed. But I do think the methodological part is important because out of all the things you raise here, when we distribute the content, maybe we need to distribute it based on the topics or address, but we'll talk about that later with the spokespersons for the speakers to prepare the incidents better for the conference because we need to distribute what you discussed about in each session. I don't know if that's clear to you now. If you have questions, go ahead and ask them.
Gracias, Duca. Perla.
Thank you, Duca, Perla.
Falta micrófono porque se alguém está acompanhando virtual não escutou.
Yes, we're missing a microphone because those of you in Zoom or if you're online, you cannot hear. Go ahead, ma'am. Yes, better that your voice, your own voice. You use the microphone, please.
¿Se escucha? Preguntaba si en esas primeras sesiones
I was asking
son mañana del
if
11 al
in
13,
those first sessions from the 11th until the 13th, if we participate too,
prepararnos mejor también con
to
nuestros
be able
delegados
to
y delegadas
prepare better with
para
our
poder
delegates, right?
plantear si es que
In
tenemos
order to
Sí, los 5
propose,
voceros de la sociedad civil y los
yes, the
5
5 speakers of
observadores
civil
que
society
salen
and
de
the
este
5
colectivo
observers
acá,
that come out of this
van a
collective here
representar a todos
will
los
be able
miembros de la
to
SAM, de la conferencia
attend the
y
entire
la
agenda,
parte
FAO agenda at the
sectorial con
conference,
los
right? Both the
oficiales
first part
o
that
el
is online
ministerial.
with the
En el caso de la
officers
ministerial
and the
en
ministerial part,
Guyana,
right? In the case of the ministerial meeting in Guyana, there's just be 5 speakers which will travel and 5
Gracias,
which
Duca.
will be virtually, will have
No hay más
virtual presence.
preguntas. Le vamos a dar la
Thank you,
palabra
Duca.
a
There are no more questions, it seems, so we'll give
compañero
the
que siga
floor to
moderando.
Iron, my peer here, for him to continue moderating.
Buenos días, compañeros. Antes de
Good morning, everyone.
preguntarles por si acaso hay alguna interrogante sobre lo que Duque
If there are any questions on what Duca explained
de la
in terms
consulta.
of the
¿No hay nadie que
process,
tenga
consultation process,
alguna pregunta más para Duca?
I'm just asking, does anyone else have any further questions for Duca? It is now time to ask them. Can only the observers be in the virtual meeting, or is that going to be a public event? It's not a public event. It's they just go log in via Zoom. Only the people that are selected can go into the Zoom meeting, right? The people selected here to ask for the floor, etc.
Bien, gracias, Duca. Dicho
Okay, thank you very much, Duca.
¿Cómo?
¿Se va a transmitir por YouTube?
No estoy
But
segura.
she's asking if it's going to be broadcasted through YouTube. I'm not sure.
Okay, ya averigüe y ya les cuento.
I'll find out for you.
listo. Gracias. Espero
Okay,
que
thank
haya
you.
quedado todo.
I
No
hope
es un evento
everyone has clarity on this. This is not a public event. We'll just have the participation. Everyone who's duly accredited will participate, okay? Now, I'd like to invite Mrs. Carmenusa, nurse, for her to please come to the stage. She will present the conclusions for us. We will also invite Taylor Turina, who would also present the considerations. Please come here. I don't know how we'll do it with space, but please come up.
Por favor, diría yo. Bueno, ellas van a hacer la presentación,
So
¿verdad?
they will present now each one of their presentations, and subsequently, we will go into a Q&A session. Once the first speaker concludes lecture, we can probably open the Q&A for that presentation. Or do you want to do a Q&A for both of them at the time? Anyway, we can do both, and they will both be present. So I'll invite Mrs. Carmen Nurse for her to initiate and present her conclusions and considerations. Thank you. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Good morning to all. Let me, on behalf of the Caribbean, and especially my network, the Caribbean Network of Rural Women Producers, which here represent 10 Caribbean English-speaking countries, along with the ACARI organization that is present here also, say thank you to FAO for our presence and participation in this forum. In addition, let me just use this opportunity to say that FAO presently has a work plan for the Caribbean network for CANRUP, which they have presented, and it is really working on improving the governance of CANRUP and the individual chapters. Let me come into today's program now. There is a serious crisis. If not given urgent collaborative attention, will result in the highest level of non-communicable diseases such as kwashiorkor, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, cancer, to mention a few. Especially our young population, tomorrow nation builders. Yes, we in the Caribbean are experiencing a food crisis. COVID-19 actually exposed the naked truth as it stands to where we are with food within our country. The ships could no longer come in and bring in, and so the governments had to look to inwardly to the food processors, the farmers that were not given priority prior to COVID-19. But now, because of the food shortages outside of the Caribbean, they are now looking inward. The reality, however, is that in the midst of this crisis, there's an alarming amount of fresh produce that goes to waste. And we need to find measures to be able to access the market. The waste is as a result of lack of proper storage, planning, glut, inadequate transportation, and little or no value added and investment. If we are to fulfill the mandate of zero hunger by 2030, it must be a collaborated effort. Let us work together along with our FAO to make it possible. I hereby present the following as our consideration. Capacity building support for our organization. We are looking at entrepreneurship. We are looking at business and not just farming or producing of items, but we are looking at a business level. A gender drive for gender equality. So it will no longer be behind every successful man is a woman, but it must be alongside every man is a successful woman. We also need advocacy training so as to ensure adequate representation and participation in decision making. Registration of intellectual property rights, especially for our rural knowledge and rural culture. Access to finance. As we are all aware that money answers all things. It is money that brought us here, and it's money that will continue to prepare us for 2030. We are looking at direct disbursement of funds to registered, transparent CSO groups to guarantee access to the intended beneficiaries, followed by monitoring and evaluation by FAO. The construction of agro-processing facilities, especially in rural areas, as to create employment, increase shelf life of products, and create markets beyond home community. Increase support towards school feeding program with the emphasis of a farm-to-table approach to promote the use of local food from nursery to tertiary. Capacity building in HACCP and gap training to make our products ready for external markets. As we are aware, such training courses are very expensive. As farmers, as producers, we are aware that no water, there's no food. So we are looking at special budget for climate funding. We are looking also to create a Caribbean agriculture virtual shopping center where member countries and beyond can now fulfill the mandate of zero hunger by 2030. FAO is at work, but we are asking for increased public awareness of the agro investment, FAO agro investment in the development within the countries. I thank you.
Gracias. Gracias, Carmen. Vamos a
Okay, thank you very much, Carmen. And we would now like to invite our next speaker for her to also her presentation.
Hola a todos, muy buenos días.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Primero de todo, agradecer por el día de
First of
hoy,
all, I'd like to thank you for
que estamos
today,
llegando al fin de
for
nuestro
inviting
trabajo.
me. And we're reaching
Trabajos duros,
the end of
muchos
our
días
work,
de
which was
discusiones,
quite hard work during all these days of discussion, but
de concordancias, de conocer unos otros, ¿verdad?
many
Porque acá tenemos la
partnerships
diversidad de
and
pueblos,
many
de
agreements,
movimientos,
right? We have
de
diversity of peoples, of
naciones,
movements, we have people
de
from different
diversos
nations,
territorios.
different
y
territories,
de las conversaciones sí vimos nuestras
and
diferencias, pero igual vimos que tenemos
in
un mismo
conversations, yes, we did
propósito,
see
alimentar
differences,
la
but
humanidad,
we saw that we have the same
respetando al
purposes:
territorio, el
to
mar,
feed
el aire,
humanity
los
by
otros seres
respecting
viventes en
air,
la tierra.
territory, humanity, and
Así
the other
nos
living
encontramos.
beings in Earth.
Esto que nos tenemos
And
en
that's how
común,
we can
aunque
meet
a veces
and
no
see what we
entendamos el
have in
mismo
common, despite the
lenguaje, ¿no?
fact that
Como
sometimes
muchos
we do not
pueblos del
understand the
Caribe.
same language,
Pero
right?
sí
Like our
sentimos.
friends from we don't speak the same language like our
Empezamos
friends
bien,
from the
ya
Caribbean,
llevamos
but we
muchos
do feel
años
the
a punto de
same.
poder
And
retomar las actividades,
it's
¿no? La
great
pandemia
to go. This has
ha
worked
hecho
for
un
many years
marco
now, but it's great to come back to the
nos,
activities.
hemos
The
podido
pandemic has
encontrar cada vez más, pero
provided a
igual ha
framework for us
traído
to meet
muchos puntos para reflejar en cuanto a
again. But
humanidad.
it's hampered
Es
us from meeting, but
importante
it's brought many
recordar que vivimos
points
diversas
to come
violencias
back, right?
sistémicas y la
We
captura
still go through different
corporativa
systemic
sigue en
violences,
nuestros
and
territorios,
corporate
pero
capture is
sigue también
still
en
in our
espacios
territories, but
internacionales
it's
como
still
este.
in
Así,
interrelations
traigo un
spaces
punto
like
de lo que
this one.
hablamos en
And I'd like
estos
to speak
días
about some
sobre lo
points,
que
everything we talked
buscamos,
about,
lo que queremos, lo que
what we want,
necesitamos, lo que
what we
los
agree upon, and what
estados
we need
hagan por
the
nosotros,
states
pero
to do
también que
for
FAO
us,
pueda facilitar este
and also
territorio
for
entre
FAO to be able
nosotros y
to
nos
facilitate
ayudar
these
a
conversations,
implementar lo que
discussions
queremos.
between each
La
other and
primera
help us
cuestión
implement
es la
what we
visión
want. The
de los
first
derechos humanos, ¿no? Lo
question
más
has to do with
simples y
human
básico
rights,
posible que aún no tenemos garantizado.
the most simple and basic
Y acá estamos
elements
apenas
that we
como
still do
individuos con
not
nuestros
have
derechos
don't
colectivos,
have them
así
insured.
como
And here as
grupos
individuals, not
colectivos
only as
pueblos de la
individuals, but as
tierra,
collective groups that are
tenemos una
members
diferenciación y es
of the land of the
importante
earth,
que los estados
we have a
reconozcan esto.
differentiation, and it's important that states
También
recognize
hablar de la
this.
tierra y de lo territorio y ahí considero el mar también.
Also talks about the
Pero
land
es
and the territory
importante
and also consider the
garantizar la
sea.
tenencia
But
de
it is
nuestros
important to
territorios, porque
guarantee the
podemos
ownership
tener los
of
derechos a
our
tener la
territories so
propiedad
we
de
can
la
have
tierra
the
que nos
right
fue
to
negada
have the
durante
land
muchos
ownership
años.
that was denied to us for so many
Y no
years.
solamente a los
And
grupos
not only
de
to
las
the
poblaciones
groups
indígenas
of the indigenous
comunidades
populations
locales, pero
or
a las
local
mujeres y a los niños y a
communities,
los
but also
jóvenes.
women, children, and the youth.
Es necesario respetar nuestra propia forma de
It is
decidir, ¿no?
necessary
Nuestros propios procesos
to get our own
organizativos.
way of deciding, our own
Y
organizational processes,
no apenas garantizar la
and
tenencia, pero la seguridad.
not guarantee
Hasta hoy
ownership,
vivimos la
but also safety.
criminalización y la
We leave the
persecución de los
criminalization and the
asesinatos de nuestros
persecution in the
liderazgos que
assassinations of our
protegen la
leaderships
tierra. No es
that protect
posible
land.
que en pleno
So
siglo
it's not
XXI
possible that
aún
in the
seguimos
21st
con esta
century
situación
we
que
continue
llevamos
having
20
this
años.
situation that we lived through
Aquí
so
hay
many years.
gente que
Here we have
seguro
people
conoce una
that
persona
for
que
sure knows a
se volvió a
person
la tierra porque
that
era.
that
No
went back
queremos
to the
que
earth
los
because they
jóvenes
had
que
to
están
protect it.
viniendo pasen lo
But we
mismo.
don't want the
Y
youth that
los
is
países
coming go
saben
through the
eso
same.
y
And the
saben la
states know
responsabilidad
that,
que
and they
ellos
know the
tienen. Porque
responsibility
hoy
they
hablamos
have
de corporaciones que
because they
ingresan a nuestros
support the
territorios
big
sin una
corporations that are going
consulta
into our
previa
territories without a free
informada. Y
consultation
que
that
esto
is
no sea apenas
informed.
los derechos de los pueblos indígenas, pero de todos que viven
But it's not only
con
for the
la
rights of the
tierra.
indigenous people, but for everyone who
También
lives in the land.
traemos la urgencia
Also,
los
we bring
impactos
this
de la
urgency
catástrofe
of the
climática
impacts
que el
of the
sistema
climate catastrophe that
agroindustrial que
this
vivimos hoy
agro-industrial system
ha criado
that
al
we live in
planeta.
today has
La
created
forma
for the
como
planet.
comemos
The
en
way
cuanto a
in which
humanidad
we
nos ha
eat
traído esta catástrofe,
in
pero igual
as a
es la
humanity has
respuesta
brought
para
this
salirnos
catastrophe,
de
but it is
esto.
the
Y
response
sabemos ya
also
de los
to exit
movimientos
the
de los
situation.
campesinos,
And
de
we
los
know
pueblos
about the farmers'
indígenas,
movements,
de los
indigenous
pesqueros
peoples' movements,
tradicionales,
the
que
traditional
la
fishing movements,
agroecología
that
es sí una
agroecology,
respuesta
it
posible para
is a
cambiar
possible
el cambio
response to
climático.
change climate
Entonces,
change.
pedimos que
Then
los
we
gobernantes
ask that the governors, the
lleven en
rulers,
serio nuestras propuestas,
take our proposals seriously, because already there we tried with hard science for you many years that it's possible, but already our indigenous traditional science already shows for some years that it is possible. It is necessary to break with the system of patriarchy, racism, colonialism that continue to be part of our territories, in our households, in our cities, in our livelihoods. And they are also big responsibles for the catastrophes that we're living in the planet and for all the violence that is still here. We need a real change, but we also need their commitment, because we already have several international treaties that guarantee our rights, but we're still missing the implementation. So here as a group, we would like to request that we reintegrate the force of implementation of these international treaties. The other point I wanted to bring to the table now that is very important is that we do know that FAO for this meeting has prioritized 4 points, but we don't feel included with these 4 points. We repeat here that we need to adopt the priority of 5 that speaks of the process of follow-up, monitoring, and assessment of regional actions, regional governance, and instances of political participation, because they see what we do. We are not just doing with the land, but we also have a political intention of actively participating of the decisions and decision-making processes that affect us. So we can also do some monitoring of the actions that we're doing in our own research, so we can show with data that what we are doing is possible and it's real. And so that is not only for us, but to communicate the people that are not living with us in our territories or in our day-to-day activities, so we can communicate to them the possibility of change. So we repeat the importance of the communication and education in these changes that we need. Communication among ourselves, but also communication outside of our cycles. We know that communication today is allied to agro-industry, so we want this to be by reinforcing our own processes of communication, so they will have a space in this commercial market that exists, and that only where we have the big companies here. So just of the management of education, we want that we see in education, the agroecological education for children, we want them to be taught, both for rural children as well as children in the cities, because we know that changes will only exist if we start with education. So then we would like to invite the states to do and implement educational policies that are agroecological in their own countries, but also that FAO and other bodies, international bodies, such as UNICEF or the WHO, can also participate of the implementation of these proposals. So, and lastly, we want that we evaluate the process of trade that exists. Firstly, because we produce too much, but it doesn't get to the people that need it, because the law of the market of money is louder than the need of humanity. And that is something that needs to be reviewed, and that is also part of the decolonization of our thought, of accumulation, of profit, and also about rethinking the way of the cycle of trade, from production, from the sowing of our foods, but also so we can value the agroecological products that do not have chemical pesticides and stuff like that, that are not genetically modified, because these are harmful to health, and this feeds a cycle of trade of these big industries. They poison us, and then they poison us with foods, and then they poison us with medications. So we want to rethink this process, and just as I said at the beginning, we are in all of the processes of the decision-making processes with an active participation and not just as a consult. Thank you.
Gracias. Ahí, Daily.
Thank you very much.
Un espacio de preguntas y
We're going to open the Q&A now.
Vamos a tener la asignación de 20 minutos
We'll
para eso.
have 20 minutes for that.
Por favor, los que pidan la
Please,
palabra,
if you ask for the floor,
nombre y organización.
name and organization.
Nombre. Elsa.
Elsa,
Nombre y organización.
name and organization.
Ok, Laura, ¿quién más?
Laura, who else?
Bueno, tenemos dos
Well, we have
solicitudes
two
de
requests
preguntas y respuestas. Vamos a darle la
for
palabra
Q&A. We're going to give the floor to Elsa first.
Bueno, quiero hacer un comentario y también preguntar
I'd
algo
like to make a comment and ask something to Tylee.
al tema del consumo de alimentos.
In regards to the food consumption, I know that there's a whole process to the value of our natural products, organic products, agroecological products. And so we have been doing this whole chain, and I would like to know how have you worked on that? Because at the very least, I'm in a province that produces organic food. And we've had a whole coordination and a platform. The producers started independently to do this process, and we decided to coordinate ourselves and organize ourselves. So legally, it is not just from the producer, but from a platform. And we set up this whole process and a coordination to work on this. But along the path, we had a lot of difficulties because really, and this cost a lot of resources to the producers. And this is for the space that was coordinated. There was a federation. And we really lost the initial topic that production should directly go to, as you say, to those that produce it. So I would like to know if you have any mechanisms that you can mention that can give us more light on those things, because already it's not just that. We are in several other things, coffee, many other things, and that commercial part and that value chain part is something that we have not really, it's not there really, not with the elements that we understand for the producers.
¿Quién sigue?
Who's next?
Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Bueno, nada más complementar esta parte
I would just like to complement this part of the mechanism of what we put as the fifth priority proposal from this alliance. I would like to complement a bit more this matter of the intersectional point of view, like that this mechanism that also consults fully with the civil society, we should have spaces for discussion or dialogue with an intergenerational point of view, but I also want that we put the diversity of sectors and who is participating here, because only in this space of civil society consultation were just women from different sectors, but also youth. So I believe it is important to integrate these, so we take back on these mechanisms, and I believe that we need to leverage that mechanism, make that agreement from the diversity of sectors that we're going to be pushing and supporting this mechanism that is so necessary. And another aspect that I believe is important to put here is this matter that has been commented on for some days, that we talk that we are in a context of a crisis, economic crisis, social crisis, climate crisis, and I just wanted to, maybe we should strengthen the effective measurements part, the programs that cater for these crisis matters. So we know that in climate change, it is affecting harvests as we speak, because many harvests are, they need a season, and now there's a drought, so there's not enough water for them, and there's no programs for that, for this crisis, or they have disappeared in some countries. We've had programs that cater for this, and maybe they have disappeared. So maybe there we can put this point forward. Thank you very much. We'll proceed now with the answers to these two questions. If you have questions, we will give another round.
Lo que pasa es que las preguntas
Yeah,
prácticamente
what happens is that the questions, practically understood, they were directed to the presentation that was done by Latin America and the Caribbean, right?
sí.
Gracias, Elsa, por la pregunta.
Thank you, Elsa, for the question. It is a bit complex because it's not just for us, it's commitment. We need to have this part of the commitments and the investments of the state. So this change actually exists. So the first thing that I would say in the situation of Brazil, that unhappily for now to get a credit to think about their harvest, they just give you a credit if it's going to be a monocrop, or never going to be using some sort of pesticides, or if you have machinery or huge machinery. So that's how they give you credits. But if you present a proposal, an agroecological proposal of native seeds that is not going to have this type of supplies in, it's not the same credit. So the first point is ask government to change the logic of systems, but this is involved with the corporate capture. So we need to do a joint work with the states and the ministries of agroecology. They have a fundamental role here because it's a business, it's a state negotiation. But I wanted to bring an example that maybe FAO could do it. I don't know if you heard about it, is that there's an award for Ecuador.
A un proyecto, a una producción innovadora de alguna
Maybe it was about an innovative project or solution, and I believe FAO can adopt this type of how do we give an award every year to a farmer or a fisher person that brings an alternatives in facing this production system that we're living. So and the awards of coins, awards in money. So it's not just an acknowledgement, it's also an award that is valuable for them. So we talk about certification now, but now every country, there's a rule about that. But FAO, as an international mechanism, could also support us in that, and maybe make an international proposal or a regional proposal, so we can facilitate this certification, because we know that there's many countries, it's very expensive. We know this adds value to our products.
de Brasil, la compra Jimena también que está implementando.
So Jimena is also implementing this, and other types of mechanisms of trade that is done directly to people. And these technological things can help us a lot if we can use these with the propagandas or with the independent trade networks for the markets and all of this. So I believe there's several options, but it's not just us, but it's also collective work of the social movements, governments, and even how FAO and other international bodies can do this. So regarding Laura's comments, I understand this as a comment, as a compliment. To complement this, we have in the notes this intergenerational section, and when we speak about being present, when we're present in the decision-making process, we have all of our diversity present here. So men, women, youth, elders, people from the sea, people from the territory, from the jungle, the snow, etc. So we need to consider all of that. And I believe the Alliance is doing a good work in coordinating these differences.
Creo que es eso, ¿no? De comentarios que tú habías hecho. Hablaste de la cuestión de las medidas
So you talk
efectivas.
about the management of the effective measurements, right?
De las crisis.
A crisis, was it?
No, sí. Entonces, que sí estamos
So, well, we are living through multiple crises, and in terms of the neoliberalism, the climate crisis, but I consider a crisis to live in capitalism already. So, and I believe there's ways of breaking the system, and what we're doing is already a way. Producing in an independent way, produce with seeds that are already the rebels. That is a way of breaking part of the system, but I agree with you that the most effective measurements, we need to start from the government, and I believe that the social movements play this very important role of our governments of collecting this. And I don't know if all of you accompany this, if your countries already have a program for the climate crisis. And this, in terms of food sovereignty, is very important because, as you were saying, we don't know what is going to happen with time, with climate. So it could be that this year we sow corn or not. It could be that it's going to be damaged, or we don't know. So how are we going to have this warranty? So governments need to create programs because you do get your harvest affected, but we need to provoke governments to create a plan of action for the climate crisis related to food sovereignty, health, and the different points that affect us. But I believe that since we're speaking of agroecology, we can focus on that as well.
Gracias. Vamos a abrir una segunda ronda. Invitamos a los compañeros.
We're going to open a second round. We'd like to invite the partners from the Caribbean to see if we have any question, an intervention to make. You also have a chance to do so now. Now we have the request of Perla. Who else? Name? Joanna, and then Perla. Sorry, Perla and then Joanna.
¿Quién más?
Who else?
Tenemos a Perla, tenemos a Joana.
Perla, Joanna, anyone else? In the case of Carmen, you have, so we're going to write down Carmen again. Anyone else? Well, we have exactly until 10:30 this morning, so we have time for the round to be broader. What I would ask you, however, is just don't go too long on your interventions. Maybe ask questions, show us your conclusions, your recommendations, just to the chase, as the Chileans say. Walter.
Recomendamos que las observaciones.
So we recommend that the observations, suggestions, or contributions would be based on the 5 priorities that we have been seeing during the sessions. So a name? Toribio. Rodrigo, sorry. I'm so sorry, I'm a bit deaf. Who else? Walter. Osvaldo. Just please try to be loud, don't be afraid. Walter also raised his hand. Already wrote down Walter. Anyone else? Alberto? Do you want to make an intervention already? Coprofan? Jimena.
Errington. Mire, vamos a ir a Alberto.
So we'll go to Alberto. So now it looks nice. Now it's good. We're close with that. And let's make a small exception. I'm going to ask the plenary so we can then organize a participation, and we're going to give them priority to the partners of the Caribbean so they can begin with this round of questions, conclusions, contributions to the plenary. So I'm going to give the floor to Carmen, and then it would be to Edinson. Carmen.
Thank you. I immediately would make reference. What was the first person in the intervention? Yeah. As she relates to value added, I'm part of a chocolate making process where we actually go from bean to bar. The bean is the cheapest level, the lowest level of income in production. We go through, if you buy the beans, the pods, and you process that, in fact, you ferment that, and you have dry beans, it's another cost. If you grind that beans, you have another price. And then if you process that into chocolate, you process it into actually making teas, it's the highest level. So the lowest level is the bottom. So if you are just producing for economic empowerment, you need to see value added at the highest to get you increase. I have here a photo of soursop. This is soursop, this is soursop, that you will just eat, buy and eat, make juice. But what you see in here at the top is soursop also with nothing added, just dehydrated. Value added, and the price for this, and compare it, is totally different. It is a snack, it is nutritious, children can use, adults, diabetics, everybody. Pull and eat, tear and eat. So you have the products, but now you have to find ways to add value to it so that it will not remain within your community, but beyond. It can go global. This is a forum also where we can think, where we can find markets to exchange products, exchange knowledge sharing, because your market and our market are totally different, but we can share knowledge. And once we share it, you can produce. That's what we do here to help one another. So the integration approach, it can work. Thank you.
Gracias.
Buenos dias. I don't have any comments any questions for the Caribbean representative, but I want to make a general comment. The problem that I see is in the Caribbean, we have things we do. In Latin America, you have things you do, but we don't get the opportunity to make the exchange where you're able to learn from us and we're able to learn from you. So when we talk about the things we're doing, we're trying to encourage other organizations within the Caribbean to do things that we have learned, and we have learned from you, and we have learned from other people. But the problem is, we don't make progress as a region of Latin America and the Caribbean because you don't get to see what we have done or what we are doing. We don't know what you are doing, so we can't try to influence that. So I believe that there should be a forum where we can have a give and take, where you can learn from us and we can learn from you. Because There's some things that you do very good that we cannot even imagine. And there's some things that we do that you might be able to benefit from. So I think that's a forum that we need, where we can help each other, because for the most part, it's what we do for ourselves that's going to benefit us. Don't look for somebody to come and give it to you, to do it for you. Don't look for the government to do things for you that you could try and do for yourselves. That is what we must consider all the time. Thank you.
Interesante la reflexión de los compañeros del Caribe.
That's quite interesting reflection from our peers from the Caribbean. In fact, I think that we as a partnership should prepare activities in the Caribbean region where, well, it's true that this could be a bit expensive, but maybe we have to make that effort for us to be able to visit the Caribbean and to be able to interact with our peers. That exchange of culture, experience, know-how will undoubtedly strengthen the movements of Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much for that observation, sir. I think it's quite valid, and it's great that both our organizations know that, and for the FAO to know that, and international entities to also know this. But we're going to now give the floor to Perla. Perla, then Joanna, followed by
Ahorita Perla y Joana. Después les
just
digo.
Perla and Joanna now. I'll tell you later who will follow.
¿Quién estaba después de Sebastián? No hay alguien que. Bueno, estaría Walt. Ah, sí, estaría ella. ¿Cómo es tu nombre?
Oh, what was your name? Jimena.
Rodrigo.
So it's Walter, Rodrigo, Osvaldo, and Jimena. Okay. Anyone else missing here?
Mafalda. Okay.
And Mafalda. Líder. Okay. So with little we'll close. Anyway, you know the order I mentioned. Thank you. Go ahead.
Uno de los puntos que
One
planteó
of the points proposed by Tylee in her intervention was about the need of having funding agriculture or the productive systems we have in our territories to somehow combat climate change, but also the multiple crises that affect us. And in the agenda proposed, the discussion agenda that the FAO has in its conference, there's a topic that speaks about funding. So I think it's important to gather this proposal, right, from our public consultation to present in that space, in the conference, the need of funding the transition processes towards agroecology, because we started based on the fact that agroecology is the solution to the multiple crises we have and we're facing. Climate crisis, economic crisis, health crisis, environmental crisis. Therefore, those multiple crises find an effective solution from the people in agroecology. So we need the funding of the transition processes because we have lost autonomy as an outcome, as a consequence of all these crises. In that regard, states need to accompany us. And We're talking about production. To improve production, we are in priority 1, right? But this is also correlated with consumption. We need to motivate, promote,
formas ancestrales de
we need to
consumo,
recover our ancestral ways of consumption.
periodos
It has to
climáticos
do with climate, with the weather, climate periods, and the own development of nature.
totalmente de acuerdo con los intercambios.
Of course, we fully agree with the exchanges, right?
Nuestro territorio.
Who wouldn't love the Swiss territories that come from our territories, but no, they come back to us industrialized. So we need to educate, re-educate our consumption, our education. So there's an action there.
Y en los medios de comunicación.
And states have to educate and train for this purpose. And it's also the media's mandate. They don't demand extra financial resources because we already have educational systems in which we need to incorporate all this. We already have official communications programs or media programs where we need to add all this, re-educate, food education, right? That emerges from our cultures, our territoriality, etc. But I also wanted to talk about intermediation, the multiple phases that you have to go through in production until you get this gets to the table, right? It has to do with processing, packaging, shipping, and we need that entire intermediate chain, exchange, marketing, trade, to be based on fair relationships. And for this purpose, we need many political debates between governments, borders, right? The borders issue, respect to wage work, migration issues. It's topics of political debates that our governments have to consider it with the speed it needs. And this is an element we want to put within the framework of this conference at the core, right? Because we need to be of concern. There are some rights that are being violated in that journey between production and consumption. Just like they displace us, they poison us, they present violence throughout in our territories. We're also saying that in this chain there are some rights, labor rights, that are workers that are being violated. That's why it's important to implement the declaration of the farmers' rights and on the entire production chain. And on the other hand side, we must mention that maybe this idea that Eriton is proposing of having an exchange forum, we can probably assume it ourselves that this space of civil society, social movements, First Nations, and a consultation process, but also from regional FAO, maybe they could drive this, and maybe we'll talk about this later on in the exchange we have with different speakers or leaders, to go back to what was once called the learning paths, right? Which was this exchange process in fincas and communities, and farms and communities, seeing experiences like the one that Carmen was commenting about, or the one that we've seen from fishing and our farming territories, etc. That would be to enrich how our territories and our people are solving hunger and climate change issues. That's it for me. Okay, thank you very much. Now, I'd just like to clarify something. It's 10:06. Let's identify, please, what will we talk about? If it's a question, you have to say it's a question for us to be ready to to answer. But if it's a comment, please, let's identify what we will say. Once we identify if it's a question or not, if it's a question, it'll be a very specific question. If it's contribution, you can go ahead, or observation, you can go ahead and comment, but try to do it as fast as possible. Thank you, Kairo. Okay, comrades here, peers. I do agree with the need of having more funding for family farming, indigenous farming. Our states currently supports agribusiness, and family farming just gets the crumbs of this, right? At least in our country, that's how it works. And we as a civil society and as a partnership, we need to seek and safeguard the fact that these funding does not mean, or it's not at the cost of mercantilization of nature. The FAO, we saw yesterday that it agreed with the carbon markets, and it mentioned specifically in their agenda the promotion of red. And we know that these programs mean a loss of sovereignty for our states, our governments, and they strongly impact the lives of women and the youth, and the difficulty of access to common goods for them to conduct their daily labor of care. Therefore, I do believe we need to be strong when we report the fake or false solutions to climate change, not sell the soul to the body, as we say, right? Not to fund at the cost of life, because the false solutions will not let us exit the crisis, but what will do so is that family and indigenous farming is the one that is going to, yes, embrace the planet.
Bueno, gracias, Cairo. Primeramente iba a mencionar eso, de que
Thank you, Kairo. I was going to mention that the FAO promotes red products a lot, and it'd be interesting to assess this type of impact that they're causing in communities, because we know about projects that have truly been horrible for people, right? And the other thing I was going to mention is that agroecology is beyond tested, that it does work in territories, that it does make the planet, that does cool the planet down. And there are many organizations, and I'm not going to be, there's many organizations that are already working in agroecology. I do not mean to disrespect FAO, but it would be great for the FAO to also support those efforts to elevate the scale, right? Increase the scale in the good sense in terms of agroecology. Now, the other thing is that the FAO effectively responds to government, but behind governments, we have the people. So the policies recommended by FAO and this space, civil society consult process, we're the people. So this also provides or backs up FAO, because we're also representing the people that represent the states, but we believe that funding and the FAO should come only from governments and not the private sector, because the private sector, despite the fact that it contributes, it'll shift towards their own interests. So that's the comment that I wanted to make. Rodolfo? Rodrigo, I'm so sorry. I did not know my name was Rodrigo, but Rodolfo, anyway, beautiful name. Now, this is just a recommendation for FAO. Regarding the situation of land tenure and land recovery, which is a conflict, it's miscalled the Mapuche conflict. No, it's a conflict that the state introduced in our territory regarding the extractivism in our territory, right? When they're occupying our territories. Now, that has generated a social political conflict for our people. Therefore, as all peoples, we are resisting this expansion from the extractivist companies in our territory. Therefore, this has generated complications because our struggle is criminalized, repressed, and therefore there's many, the youth oppose that, right, in many organizations, and they're in prison now. We have more than 200 Mapuche political individuals that are in prison, and it's not in the Chilean constitution. Therefore, this means it's a constant violation to the rights of our people. Therefore, we're asking for the presence of a Human Rights Commission in our people, for them to see the situation we're currently living. And this, of course, does not reach public opinion because the media, which are together with extractivism, they don't show the situation of the violation of human rights because they're colluded. Thank you, Osvaldo.
Buen día, compañeros, compañeras.
Good morning, comrades. I wanted to see here as well that I wanted to match with our comrade Talia that on what she was saying. I wanted to say that our leader, the man, is at the verge of extinction. But this was said in 29th of August 2014. Fidel Castro said so. An important biological species is in the risk of disappearing, man. And of course, this model of the agribusiness is permanently attempting or daily attempting against life. I say, what else should happen? How many more million tons of poison should be put on our land, to our water and our seas?
Nosotros como organizaciones,
So we as organizations, as farmers, indigenous organizations of the different expressions that also live in the cities, we have this proposal and we say agroecology. We say together we can cool the planet. In this documentary, in this magazine, together we can cool the planet. There's a number of calculations. How many greenhouse gases are there are produced by the agri-food system, the food waste. And I go to a matter that if you check this, the ICA page that has a lot of incidents in America. So what is it about? It speaks about productivity and competitiveness. I ask you for real, how long can a worker last chopping cilantro in the United States at the speed that they cut cilantro and package? How long can they last? Here in our country, for a moment I had the sad and opportunity of seeing the fingers of women that work in salmon industry. They work in cold, their fingers were completely deformed, and I can't imagine what is the pain. But also in the north, we can see the hands and the joints of the women that work with grapes. So we, from this important and rich space, we have our statements of the farming rights, and we need to have a narrow alliance with FAO. We need to promote this and we need to implement this because these important biological species
extinguiendo es el
that is
modelo.
being extinguished by the model of the agribusiness. That's all. Thank you.
Gracias. Sigue Jimena.
Thank you. And now we have Jimena.
Hola, entonces hablábamos,
Hello.
encontré maravillosa la idea de
I
hacer
thought the idea of doing technological transfers is wonderful. So we can find experiences of success on each place that they are taking place. I know there's a lot of experiences happening, maybe at a small level that we don't even realize, but it would be very interesting to maybe make a circuit of visits to know each other more. The agroecological transition needs to be feasible also for those who live in cities. We can't think that because we live in the farms and we love living in the countryside, these cities with millions of people will disappear. And these people are the main consumers of the large companies and industries such as Nestle and all of the ones we know. So there's not just one path for that agroecological transition. We need to see what are the paths that will help that independence of farmers, that will bring financial health for them, but also with food sovereignty and also caring for land, that we know is the only way to go, the agroecological path to produce food for the planet without continue damaging the land. Within that, we have several experiences of short circuits. I represent the urgency where we work with communities that sustain agriculture. We have small groups of people living in the cities and that commit to care for this space of a farmer and financially support them so they can look after that land and they produce food for that group of people. We also know it's very important that that we regularize the local market so the farmers can also have their products exposed and sell for people who have the time and have this vision of going there and buy straight from the producer. But we also need to think, how are we going to be competitive with these big markets and these big industries? We need to have clarity on the fact that we have a number of people that don't take the time to go to a market to buy a product directly from farmers. They buy at markets. So we need to see the possibility that farmers should have small solidarity-based co-ops where they maintain their way of production, but that they manage to have a regulation based on their way of living so they can sell to big markets and companies. In Brazil, we have several corporates. It's from the production of clothes, from cotton, the whole productive chain by farming companies who have a lot of experience of typical products of Brazil, especially of collection that go to Brazil and Europe. So I think that this technological transfer that we could know in our territories with the small success stories, this could be a great solution for us.
Gracias, Alberto.
Thank you. Next, Alberto.
Gracias, presidente da mesa. Saludo
President of the table, greetings to the table. I would like to make a comment, a general comment, and maybe a suggestion as well. Firstly, I would like to highlight that we live with so much problems, so much anguish, that sometimes we forget about our strengths. For instance, the fact that we are here from 6 countries, I don't know how many, 20 organizations or so, that are different. We go 4 or 5 days together. We get to know ourselves. We learn with each other. We need to make an exchange, and this is a very good thing. So we need to value that a lot. This is the integration that I thought of Latin America, the Caribbean, the true integration of the habits, languages, experiences of their development. And I wanted to highlight the importance that this alliance has, because we know sometimes that we forget. For instance, this morning, because we wait while I was waiting for my coffee, I learned a lot from Cairo. I didn't know how is it a ship that goes on the sea for 20 days fishing. There's a captain, the cook on board. You have pirates, and that there's a risk for them to their lives. There's traffic in the middle of the ocean. I didn't know that. I learned just this now. And then, how many things can we exchange here?
La importancia de, apesar de las dificultades que tenemos,
So the importance, despite the difficulties that we had, I hope we can maintain these spaces. And another strength, that despite the differences that we had, we are working with a lot of respect, with a lot of understanding. Yeah, I also wanted to highlight this as an important thing. So, second thing is, my apologies. I had my ear here and the other one on my phone because at that time, on the side of FAO in Rome, there's a meeting of the World Committee of the Decennium of Family Farming. So I'm partly accompanying them, where they spoke at that time, there with the president and the ambassador of the Dominican Republic, Maravelo. The president also spoke, the one that greeted us yesterday, of the committee, of the work committee of food security. And we had these world networks that are part of the Farming Lives and the forum, etc. So I'm keeping them company then. So the other management I would like to highlight here, and here I want to be brief.
resaltar.
I would like to highlight that, for instance, that we need to find ways of strengthening organizations. I feel that organizations are as follows. There's times where we're doing well, at times we're doing very poorly, and we are going through a certain crisis pretty much throughout Latin America. So there's an empowering of the organizations, and for us to face all of these processes, we need to have a strong organization, representative, valued, and we need to find ways and mechanisms for strengthening the organizations that are representatives. So the indigenous, the women, the youth. I'm worried because strong organizations mean strong democracy. It is exert citizenship. It's not. The changes are not only for governments, they are done by organized people, because the organizations, it is not done only by political parties. And this is very important because we are going through many things. The unions also went down a lot. Governments take away the financing, they break the spine. So that is why I don't know, Duca. I know FAO is an entity for governments. We need to work for governments. But for us, we need to find mechanisms for FAO that being backed up by governments. It has a way of not directly funding organizations, but for instance, an articulation such as this one, organizations that are very representative, that can be supported. So we could have an agreement, as we had it before, directly with the alliance to maintain an operational secretariat. And these are things that maybe we need to discuss, because this is very important also for FAO, because the multilateral bodies will just depend only of governments, and they have a short life because every day they get removed from their funding. So if there's a backup of society, we can also maintain multilateral organizations more strengthened. And lastly, I would like to insist on two things. One, we spoke a lot about these days on the copies. We had next year the COP30. The COP30 is going to take place in Brazil, in the heart of the Amazonas, in Belém do Pará. The whole world is turning to the COP. The big negotiations on climate are going to take place there, for good or evil. Everything's going to take place there. How do we get there? How are we going to be preparing? Maybe the most important thing is in the heart of the Amazonia. So we are from South America, Latin America, the Caribbean. We have 8 countries in this region that are doing the Pan-Amazonian regions. How are we going to be preparing ourselves then to participate in this COP? So then, are we going to be inside discussing or protesting outside? It's important to get there. It's important to have proposals. It is there. The future of the humanity is there. It's just with the natural resources that we have in the region. So I believe that this is a challenge that maybe we need to see how can we propose this and how can we even put this in the statement, the spokesmanship. How can we have a repercussion with governments and the issue of COP? And is that we should also be heard because these are the big negotiations for. Lastly, reinforce what has been said, and this can be part of the statement. I believe the spokesman people are going to be paying a lot of attention to that and not forget about the statements of the United Nations. The statement of the Letter of Rights of Farmers. We need to take this declaration outside of the paper. There's an approval of the United Nations, and maybe the best one is the decennium of family agriculture, the plan of action. All of it is there. We need the implementation of how we make our statement, as we did in this alliance this week, how this have a repercussion in both statements in the conference of FAO. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alberto. We don't want to leave anyone without participating now. And we have 3 last participations, and then we will close. Mafalda, Sara, the last ones. Very briefly, I'm going to leave you 1 minute. So the 3 ones we have now, Mafalda, Sara, and Laura, you have 1 minute each. Yes, let's go then. Don't take away from our minute. You're using up on my minute. Okay, I'm going to go in the group of the comments on this group, and especially what we spoke here and what you said about the importance of having here the people from the Caribbean and speak about the experiences of social movements. In the World March of Women, we don't make any differentiation in terms of territories regarding the Latin American region and the Caribbean region. And we just talk about the Americas because we need and we feel that the Caribbean should be incorporated in our meetings, in our integration, and in everything that means the experiences and the exchange of experiences. So we believe that we should find a way. Here we spoke jokingly here, are we FAO or not? And this also sets a difference for the integration. So it would be very good to eliminate these barriers that don't allow us to integrate, because in these days where we have been here as the civil society and this alliance, we have felt that everyone should have been integrated in our debates. And those who were commenting here were saying, how sad that we can't integrate ourselves because of language. I believe that was the main obstacle. But when we have the intentions of integrating ourselves, we ourselves try to find our own interpreters. We don't need funding for interpreting between those who speak different languages. We have volunteers for that as well. So we need to find a way, as we were saying, we need to have ourselves in the social movements. We need to provoke ourselves and make that integration. And a second point that has a lot to do with this is that apart from all of the crises that we're speaking about, for some time already we've been foreseeing an energy crisis. We need to make the city more rural. This was a campaign integrated by Namuri from before the pandemic. So, and this took a lot of effect because of the pandemic. So I'll tell you the campaigns that we need to do with organizations with such as rural organizations have a lot to do with integration in all of the plans. And that is all my contribution. Thank you very much. So we're gonna give the word to Sara now. And it seems that Laura is declining the use of the word, so we can do a better use of time. Sara, you have the word then. 1 minute. It's time for the snack, so we ask you to be punctual. Take just 1 minute, not because we don't want to hear you, but because we are pressed for time. So we also need to find other spaces that show. So we give you a minute to those who are missing. So just please don't take longer than you were allocated. All right, so in a way, I'm a bit concerned because I see the threats that constantly are speaking with agro of the transnational companies, the land not being productive, invasions, and the companies that are absorbing everything. I wonder if in a couple more years, where are we going to be looking at if this continues on land? Are we going to be looking at our sea? So then I feel that artisanal fishing is not installed at the same level of importance as the agro-industry. Without a doubt, agro-industries are the most important thing. But the sea today is being threatened by all fronts, from all fronts. So we talk about climate change. Countries such as Ecuador and Peru and Chile will be hugely impacted by climate change and global warming. Therefore, the resources of the sea that are the most affected ones are the resources that are bentonic resources, those that are at the shore. And those resources live. This is where we have the most vulnerable communities in countries, when we have the collectors, the algae collectors, and the women, mostly. So then I ask FAO in the declaration that the sea should have the importance and the position that it deserves, because I point out this again. In 30, 40 more years, we're going to be looking at the sea. The option that we have for food sovereignty, the eyes are going to be on the sea. The fish have a tail. They move north or south, outwards, into the sea. They look for the habitats, and the coastal resources can't move. And I ask you, the artisan fisheries collection, so small-scale fishing and collection needs to have the same position that we look at the land. The big salmon industries, industrial industries, extensive aquaculture that today the south of Chile has. The situation in the south of Chile is unprecedented. The coastal line is being threatened by the big industries in Chile, not only in Chile, but also in other countries. And that is why I ask you to take more seriously the importance that this deserves, the importance of the sea, because when we talk about seascape that we had in the Chilean constitution and we lost it. This is important because everything you're speaking about agroecology, it's still these concepts in the artisan fisheries in the sea. The artisan fisheries have not installed them. And not also, the institutions also don't have that. And that's why I ask FAO that when you speak with the countries, please, let's install the sea in the position it deserves. Thank you, Sara. Thank you very much.
Y con ella sí cerramos, ¿verdad?
Okay, now we'll give the opportunity to Laura and we'll be able to close with her. Okay. Comrades, what'll happen now is that we'll have another moment to exchange even with the officers, the senior officers, the FAO, who will be here after lunch. We can continue with this because this will not end now. Because they're also requesting us to please have this break, this pause in place. Friend here. Yes, I'll be brief. I'm Elga from Coperfam, and yesterday, when we made a presentation, we mentioned at the end of it, and I'm here requesting for land tenure to be in the declaration because all these days we have talked and we haven't prioritized land tenure, and we know that we have many issues with the concentration of transnational companies, right? We have the taking away of land from First Nations. Please does not leave this aside from agriculture. It's got to be linked in agroecology. I think that no social advance is without a struggle, and the land tenure struggle is very important. Thank you. Okay, yes, our declaration we'll read it later, and if we need some reinforcement, we'll make comments and suggestions. I think it's important. That's why I wanted to participate, because we still need to put that the regional conference, because since we've been talking about technologies, which is in priority 3, right? Since last conference, and it talks about the use of technologies. And if you realize, it's one of the topics that will be discussed in a technological innovation will be discussed on the conference. So let's recover what we already have in this international framework of human rights, the CBD. Let's reform the knowledge of traditional knowledge, right? And avoid extractivism. And with that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you, Laura, for reminding us, those of us that were following up from the prior conference, because this is a follow-up. And it does not stop when the conference stops, because we are the ones that have to be there in a constant manner. To conclude, I've got 3 housekeeping rules, announcements. We have a break now until 10:45. 10:45. You have 10 minutes for coffee, but before that, please raise your hands. Who's going to be here for lunch? Raise your hand so I can count you, whoever's going to be here at lunchtime. Who is going to be here for lunchtime? Who is not going to be here during lunchtime?
Buenas tardes para esta segunda y última parte.
Good afternoon. For the second and last part, we will
De los voceros
begin with choosing the speakers and observers for the next conference. We will read the draft of the declaration. After reading it via chat, you'll be able to write down your points of view. And after reading the declaration, or the draft, we'll be able to do the exchange session with the officers that will arrive later on.
Voy a leer los nombres de los voceros que van a estar presentes.
So I'm going to read the names of the speakers that will be present in Guyana and the observers. We've got Laura, a young woman from First Nations, Fernando, a farmer, young, Coprofang, Lorena, from the small-scale fishing sector. We have Gisela, farmer and agroecologist. We have the English-speaking Caribbean, Carmen, nurse. These are the 5 people who will be the speakers, will be the spokespeople, speakers proposed by the organizations. We are giving our opinions now.
Compás, sabemos las dudas que tienen. Vamos a
We know the questions you have, and we will ask our comrades or our peers to please come to the stage so everyone can see you, recognize you, because the criteria used, for example, you from the First Nations and indigenous, you're a woman, the youth, the South, the Central America, and the Caribbean. Those are the criteria that we use, like the fishing and the sheep. We're trying for it to be from all the regions, almost all sectors, or most sectors, because unfortunately it's 5 or 0. We've always been requesting for more speakers, for us to have more speakers, because we're much more than 5. And the truth is we're 5 speakers, and we have to know the regions, the moments, spaces. We have to know the context of how extensive we are in the Latin American and Caribbean region. There are a lot of us. So please, comrades, can you please come up to the stage? Lorena, Fernando, friends from the Caribbean. It's just for everyone else to see you. Carmen, nurse.
No se está bien.
Lorena, Lorena.
Lorena.
A ver, le explico, compañero.
Por favor, compañeros, cuando van a opinar y van a hacer alguna pregunta,
Please, if you make a comment or a question, please try to raise your hand first, and then in the second place, you can ask the relevant question or the relevant recommendation you wish. Thank you, and give us 1 minute to complete all the speakers.
Vuelvo y menciono. Carmen Norse, del Caribe
I'd like to
anglófono.
mention again Carmen Nurse from the English-speaking Caribbean. Laura, woman from indigenous youth. Lorena, from small-scale fishing sector. Fernando, from Coprofam, agriculture, farmer, he's from a cooperative. And the person that's missing is Gisela. Gisela unfortunately had to leave because she had to take a flight, but she's a woman from First Nations. She's a farmer. And she cannot be present now, but these are the our five speakers which will be our speakers for the conference. Now I'm going to open the floor for questions. Just an observation. Please remember what we were talking about during the assembly. The participation of young women, the youth, indigenous peoples, as one of the foundations for the representation of social movements. As you can see, the final makeup of our representation in Guyana will be made up of 4 females, 1 man, right? And the only man that's going there is our peer Fernando from Coprofano. Just for you to see that there's no discrimination here for women, right? I would have loved, in terms of balance, gender balance, to have 1 more man. Nevertheless, the organizations are the ones that have proposed these speakers. In the case of our fishing peers, I know that small-scale fishing, I know that we're quite delicate, sensitive, but Lorena is representing the work of the 2 forums within the alliance, like the global organization. And I've been asked for Lorena's participation, but in addition, just for you to be at ease as the small-scale fishing sector, be at ease that Lorena has also been appointed for her to be the speaker in reading the declaration that we are obtaining today. So for the fishing sector, that's enough for us. It leaves us at ease because we're making the sector visible. What Sara said and what my brother, the leader, mentioned too, and what we have sought as the Global Forum, but we're also contributing with the role of women in small-scale fishing. So please feel at ease, everyone, represented with Lorena, and we should see the balance with all the other productive sectors. Thank you very much, Cairo. Alberto? Walter? Alberto, Walter, who else?
Gracias, hermana.
Thank you, my sister. I wanted to say that I'm very well represented by these speakers. They're quite representative. The ideal would be for everyone to be speakers, nevertheless, that is not possible. The first time that I see a 4-to-1 ratio, so please let's give them a big round of applause for all the speakers. Women in power. The official picture now. Speakers. Elsa. Yes, I just wanted to ask, because there'll be a YouTube broadcast, right? You'll broadcast, but will we also have a Zoom? Will we also broadcast via Zoom? Yes? because it's different. So I believe that maybe we'd have to review the attendees of participation because it's different.
Duca, por favor, yo creo que habías mencionado lo de la participación abierta.
Luca, I think you talked about open participation, but it wasn't open. So if you could mention that again. Okay, the conference space is a limited space. It's limited to guests. The speakers will be invited as representatives for civil society, and they were elected. Therefore, Fernando is not going to represent Coprofam. Fernando is a speaker of civil society, and he's got to carry the message, convey the message, and everything we discussed here. So everything that's online or in person, he's going to be able to attend because virtually it's via Zoom online, right? And from March 11th until the 13th, he can go into Zoom, raise his hand, write in the chat box, ask, comment, etc. And everything else, everyone else that wants to comment on the conference, they'll go through YouTube. It's not going to go directly into the space of the conference, right? But they have a special condition because they're representing you in that space, which is less people. To have both spaces. Okay, thank you, Duca. Having said that, I think that with the big round of applause, we do agree with the 5 speakers. And let's go to the assignment of the observers. You may sit down, yes, you may take a seat.
Por el seguimiento al trabajo que se está haciendo, a lo que comentó Cairo en su momento.
As a follow-up of the work done, what Cairo mentioned at the time, we've mentioned 5 more people, but out of those 5, it is open to other proposals. We're open. If you agree with this, it could be a balance. For example, women, farmers, the fishing sector, everyone that's sitting here in the organizations we're grouping and representing. And we have Maria Noel de Moela, Perla de la Clock, Taina, me from City, Joanna from the Global Movement for Women or March, and Eduardo from Club. Now we're going to leave the floor open for you to propose or recommend someone, or to say if you agree with these people or not. I do have an observation here because we have some comrades that are coming from the agricultural side who are represented in 1 or 2 organizations there, and I'd request for them to leave the space for the fishing sector, small-scale fishing. Thank you, Cairo. Just one from agriculture. Microphone, please. Hello, peers. We'll be supporting our peers or companions because if there's some positioning that is happening and we're looking from away and we see that they're far away and we see that they're not reflected, we'll permanently be in communication with those that are representing us for them to position those moments where we see that need to be reinforced. The second thing I'd like to mention is that Perlas in my spot are available for spots because we'll be supporting, but since we'll be online, we'll be commenting. If there's anyone that wants to be part of this, we'll be supporting anyway, so you can take our spots. Leader?
Aprovecho para saludarlos a todos.
I'd like to take this moment to greet all of you, comrades. I think it's of utmost importance. I do want to advocate for my Chilean peer. She's from collection. we are here to make visible the collection in small scale fishing. And I think that she's been a very important speaker, spokesperson here. She came to reaffirm here, restate what my struggle since day one. And I think it's important with our other companion here, other meet that is fisher, our collection here should be there to learn, right? I think that that is important because our peers will be present, the other ones, right? They can go to that meeting. It's not that they'll ban entry, right? They'll never ban the entry to you. You can be outside, you can be listening, you can be following up. It's not those that get resources can support that work. Welcome. Yes, all that is welcome. That's how we do it in any international process. So I'd like to request a space for my collector, artisanal or small scale collector peer from Chile. Just one comment. And global organizations and their platforms, the two global forums of fishermen and fishing workers, we work together. And we have deep respect, profound respect for each one of the global organizations. Now, when we propose Lorena for her to be part of this, we're clear that the WFF is already occupying a space. And the other forum, due to logic, was going to get the other space that we're requesting for fishing. But considering that the representative of the other forum is giving their spot away and in favor of a WFF member that is representing the fish collection sector, we'd like to thank the leader for having proposed this. And we propose that our comrade Sara Garrido, who was from Small Scale Fishing, a woman and a collector from WFF, can actually represent us as the group of observers. Thank you.
Seguimos esperando observaciones,
¿Algún otro
sugerencias.
comentario o alguna otra?
Any other comments or requests? Or should we just stay with what Mariano, Perla, and me, and everyone else said? And we'll add Comrade Sarah. And does everyone else agree with all the other observers? So, okay, if everyone agrees, let's please give a big round of applause.
Sí, quería yo
Yes,
comentar.
I wanted to comment regarding that we have the nominations of observers, and I would love to ask and request for the International Indigenous Forum of Iayala, not just Maria Eugenia Chalke, because we ourselves to a matter of decisions of the collective, but I would love that international forum of Ayala would have the condition of observers, and I give the information so we can get the names crossed. Perfect. Maria Noel and Perla, as you've seen this, they're going to be supporting this project. Nonetheless, they're going to be able to interact. They've granted the both spaces, and if you're interested in being part of it, I believe, yes, it perfectly could. You could join to the group of observers. In the case of the Caribbean people, we have now within those who are credited to participate, we already have Carmen. And Carmen, and we'll be making available for the people of the Caribbean one space as observer. So this is for us to integrate ourselves and we can relate in a more real way in the practice. I don't know if you have any interest of promoting someone for the group of observers or not.
Me refiero al Caribe.
I mean the Caribbean. Maria Noel. One thing it's key to say here, regardless of you being the participants of this or observers, regarding a partner, welcome to be part of those who represent us, but we do have clarity on the fact that it needs to be the delegates who have participated in this process. So it could be you, madam, because we already are mute here. We have another person who is not in the process. It's going to be hard. So it is important that the organizations understand that it needs to be the people who are here because we are already imbued in this process. Yeah, that's also valid for the people from the Caribbean. It needs to be someone from here that can also reinforce the part of the participation of the Caribbean in the observers part. Microphone for the Caribbean, please.
Okay, I will go in as the observer. And if I can not make it, I will find a substitute. That's okay?
No hay traducción.
Sí, en respuesta lo pregunta el señor Errington, que él dice que si él
So,
no lo
in response to Mr. Errington, if he can't do find the observer, they can find someone else. And we're saying that the people who are in this process of the consult, I believe it will be the two young people that are joining them. One of them would be, if it can't be.
The problem is they have to check their work schedule. They cannot confirm now. But if we...
Son solamente los delegados presentes. Cualquiera de los
It's
cuatro.
just the present delegates. Any of the four, we already have one that is participating.
No tienen cuatro. Tienen cuatro.
We have four. Four here.
No, es que yo quiero decir, porque lo que comenta el señor Errington es que hay gente, están en cuatro, sí. Carmen va a ser la vocera, entonces hay tres opciones. Están diciendo que no se pueden confirmar ahora porque tienen que ver sus agendas, estas tres personas. Y tú me estás, pero lo que ellos quieren proponer es que caso estas personas no se puedan, que ellos puedan indicar un otro joven de Caribe que esté involucrado en el proceso. Yo entiendo lo que está comentando porque sería mejor que la persona que estuviera acá participando pudiera participar para dar seguimiento.
It would
Todavía...
be better that the person is here. It should be give a follow-up. We need to understand that there's a follow-up. For us here, there's several options to choose, but they are limited here. So what I want to say is that we should not be limited. Let's not create a limit of participation to the Caribbean partners so they can have the freedom of choosing, but also we can propose that, please, if these two young people can't make it, maybe they should appoint someone who is participating in this process that is up to date with the FAO negotiations or so, or that maybe they can have a preparation before going to the meeting. That is what I wanted to add. So yeah, we understood that clearly. We understand also that we have standards and procedures, and this is the one we're applying. The role of the observer necessarily has been stated that it needs to be somebody who has been in this whole process that accompanied us and has the knowledge of what we've discussed and spoken about. So then again, an observer that does not know or was not here. So this observer is just to reinforce and to help in any case to the person who is appointed officially. So I would leave the space for the Caribbean. So you three check your agendas. So I would ask you, please, to make some room in your agenda. So those who can move your agenda and can guarantee the participation is the person participating. So this will guarantee the process and the procedure that we have. We will be respecting this and getting to know that those who are going to be there have been part of this process. If I explain myself, I've always, here we all have equality of conditions. Nobody's the boss. We all are an organization that is horizontal, and we're going to have the flexibility of waiting who can put their agenda to be appointed an observer. If we agree, we will be there and they will leave the space for the observation to the Caribbean, and later they will show us which one of the three could be the person who's going to be participating as an observer. Thank you. Having said this, if we don't have a lot, if we don't have anything else to say, we will be confirming the representation that we're going to have, the social movements in Guyana. If so, let's give ourselves a round of applause and let's go to the next point.
Los demás estaremos en YouTube.
Everything else is going to be on YouTube.
Tenemos presentes aquí los oficiales que tuvieron ayer con nosotros en
We have here the officers that we had here in the debate. In fact, we're first going to read the draft of the statement before spending some time with them to see if now
el borrador.
they get those just and they bring the draft.
Una observación, vamos a
An
darle
observation. We're going to give some reading to the declaration, and I suggest, please, that make a note in where you consider it should be modified, or maybe give some visibility, or when you have observations. So then we're gonna give some we're gonna read it, taking into account that we are a bit past the time and we're a bit over the time, and we have invited the officers of FAO to be half an hour with us, and their time is until noon. We need to make a change of the schedule in that sense, so we can have this exchange with them regarding these and the Q&A. So anything that we have left, but it's going to be 30 minutes sharp. But we still need to read the declaration, and when we read that, we know that we all have and will have a recommendation, some suggestion, and also for the declarations, we should bear in mind that we are going to make that reading in front of FAO officers in Guyana, and that the declaration should have recommendations, particular recommendations, and we can't just make a very broad recommendation otherwise, because we're going to give an allocated time for the reading of this declaration. Just for you to bear that in mind when we say our recommendations or when we want to reflect in these statements. So having said this, we would like to invite the officers of FAO to approach us.
Bueno, compas, vamos a hacer la apertura de esta mesa de diálogo con
Well, now we're going to open the table of dialogue with the officers. We know we heard them yesterday. We also talk ourselves. We make suggestions, questions, or recommendations. And we also know that we had certain things just there that were not really landed down. They got information, and maybe we can open this up for 2-3 minutes from their side, and the feedback is going to be from your side in this couple of minutes. So we begin. Left to right? All right, I would like to really thank this space, because yesterday maybe I wasn't very clear what I presented on the Green Climate Fund and the projects of climate change. We don't work with carbon. These are not carbon bonds what FAO is working on. These are projects that promote the resilience, the mitigation, and the adaptation to climate change. And this implies the implementation of good practices in the territories with the communities that are affected by climate change in actions that allow you to be more resilient to that context. We never speak about carbon. We are not involved into carbon things because house distribution of benefits is a very controversial thing, and it's a very difficult thing to do. But what we do is to work directly with the communities, and we guarantee the climate resilience and the adaptation to climate change. So it is a little bit of mitigation. There's always mitigation actions, but the mandate that we have received and the consultations that we do with the community, what they're most interested in is adaptation topics. So we focus on that. And I wanted to leave that very clear so we can know that very well. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I wanted to just reinforce what we discussed yesterday. This is a very important space. It was very enriching. We made note of all of your comments. We stayed talking about this. So we thought your comments were very important, and we also acknowledge that we have our limitations based on organizations of the UN that are accountable to governments and countries, but on behalf of the governments, and particularly in agriculture. But we always reinforce the importance that at a country level, we should have all of the processes of formulation, consultation, analysis in a participative way. Here also, all of the regional processes. We also have the governments, and we always try to get spaces for participation for NGOs. So this is part of our structure, the program of the strategic framework, as we said. So before, one topic I didn't have any time to speak of yesterday is that I was speaking with Duca that maybe anticipate this process of a dialogue of the council for the preparation of the conference. So these comments can be done before we finalize documents, because the documents now are part of the conference and they are ready. We can't change them. They're published. Of course, we did a process first time of the consult with the civil society in the meantime. And I believe that we believe it was very good, but it is not enough for incorporating these in the documents. We do anticipate, however, maybe we would have a better result. This implies that we need to see how to do with this consult. Maybe this is a different type of things that are not so much things over the documents, but it should be the preparation for the participation to the conference. So it's more or less that, because we also had a consultation of experts, and we can add this process in a more effective way. The second is improving our communication channels with you. I believe we spoke about that already yesterday. We have several processes associated to what you ask in terms of priority number 5 for the monitoring, assessment, and governance that we can share better with you in a more systematic way. And for this, I ask, of course, the support of Luca and their team to keep this regular channel with you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We ask the two officers that were missing that they have 2 minutes to have any type of reflections. And based on this, the parties that are in the public, their reflections, their recommendations, and something that was left unsaid, so we can bear in mind that towards the officers.
Mas que todo lo de ayer un poco nessa linha de Maya, ¿no?
Regarding yesterday, and what Maya said, the importance of always having a dialogue in these formal spaces that reinforces the dialogues that we do throughout time with different areas. And I bring 2 things from here. So one is maybe the need of being an FAO and of supporting and helping our colleagues, of which I include myself in, to understand in a better way how to dialogue and work together with the organizations of civil society in the countries. Particularly, I believe that at the regional level, some of us in history, we were learning with you, but maybe we can make another step,
mais intenso, no sentido de, junto com os
a more intense step. So together with you, we can design something that will allow the colleagues, maybe the execution of a project, a day-to-day project in the national office, so we can understand how the organizations work to promote this in the dialogue, always assuming that we have different roles from each place. And maybe I put this as a query as well. Maybe we should also explain in a better way what we do. How do we function? Who we are? For you, maybe think here also a process of dialogue and training among ourselves that is a two-way thing. So you can understand the limitations that you have as well as we do. And then we adjust expectations and points of view. And that is something that I have here. And the last reflection is the topic. There's not a lot of disagreements in the topics that we have said in the documents of the conference. The programmatic part, we have agroecology, women, the youth, indigenous people. We have the different social groups that need to be at the center of the transformation process of the agro-food systems for several of the things that you yourselves spoke about yesterday. And that is what I take home from the conversation.
Es imposible dar crédito a todo lo que
It is
ustedes
impossible to give credit to everything that you said. It's a very rich conversation yesterday. Now I'd like to focus on one point, which is priority 5th. That is this accelerator of FAO that we do in several places, but not in a way that is so consolidated as you are requesting. And the importance of trying to develop this in a very consolidated way at an internal level and at an external level. At an external level, promoting the public policies with the participation, with your participation, because public policies with participation are better public policies. We should also have the inclusive governance of you. This is better governance as well, with all of its diversity, and creating and opening other permanent spaces that will allow for this. Within FAO, this is one of the huge challenges. And I believe that we should also look at the possibility of training at the level of FAO. So the representations also acknowledge this role from opening the doors and have inclusive forums as part of our roles. But if we don't do that, we are contributing to inequalities, to the marginalization, to the processes of depredation as well, as you mentioned them before. So I believe there's a whole dynamic that calls for greater attention from our side. The full effective participation with transparent information, clear accessible data, gathering the progresses and the existing standards, and working together with you to bring all of these down to earth and make it into a reality in the farms, in your lives and in our works. That's all for me. Thank you.
Gracias. Dicho eso, escuchando las palabras de los oficiales, quisiera...
Thank you. And after hearing the words of the officers, I'd like to... Duca? 1 minute, Duca. But we'll give the floor to the organizations. Yes, thank you, colleagues. I accompanied our colleagues since yesterday, right? When your discussions, you discussed, I was here. I just wanted to convey a message. To our colleagues that are here, I'd like to leave you as witnesses, because what you made for that consultation process to have so much participation was to join efforts and resources for 3 events to happen in a quite strong manner. Maybe this helps as an example for us to be able to optimize our own resources to allow in a coordinated manner a better participation of civil society in our encounters, facilitating the fact that they could come maybe 1 day before for an articulation and stay close to us beyond the online world, because I know that you do contact with that through that. And it's quite evident today that we should allow an exchange between sectors, but also between the Latin America, with the Caribbean, with the English-speaking Caribbean. I think that there's an important richness here of experiences, perceptions, needs, priorities. Many are common, but the others not so many. So it's just an alarm for our FAO colleagues, for us to draw some inspiration from them and therefore contribute in our way. Okay, thank you, Duca. We're going to give the floor to whoever is present here and wants to speak. Please raise your hands if you'd like to comment. Osvaldo? I'd like to thank all our friends that organized this event all these days, and I'd also like to thank our officers and the staff of FAO, all the professionals. We come with willingness. Remember, well, I came in a quite pessimistic manner, and I talked about this with some of my peers, but I feel like we agreed with many things, that you have a great sensitivity for the issues that we have as humanity, which are not only our problems. We've reflected, we worked in the new constitution, in the space of the Constitutional Convention in Chile, and we had to discuss a lot. We were there with our peers from Mananaguria and the organization on July the 28th. We saw each other on a weekly basis, and we talked to each other, the most different sectors, and we told the other sectors our proposal is it has a lot of solidarity. And when I was making my intervention, we as CUT, the Central Union of Workers, and as contributors, we built these goals, and I'm quite concerned. And landing this to our country, I think that here we legislate the reform to the law, and we extend the law and irrigation, as you very well know, and we know throughout all these years, those millions and billions of resources from the Chilean state, out of that, only 8% goes to family farming. How can we continue with these type of injustices that prolong inequalities? And I was telling my comrade Lisa, and sorry that I'm speaking so much about Chile, but because we were with these guys in 2006 when they were in the Penguins movement. In 2011, they invited us. We're in the forums, and today they have important tasks in the government, important duties within the government. And what happens to us as organizations? We do not know how to work with them. Why is it so hard from the part of the state to generate better conditions? I'm just asking that, and I'm also doing some self-criticism here. We do that too as movement, and I think that the FAO can contribute a lot with this. The FAO has accrued knowledge, right? An accumulation of knowledge and richness. And I'm saying this because the UP government president Allende asked 2 studies to the FAO in so little time. And the FAO provided studies on the classification or rating of soil land in Chile. And the second study, which I don't know if it exists or not, but President Allende asked for a study of microclimate in Chile, which we have not reaped the benefits of, right? And because that information does not exist, we allow, and there's no possibility to question the forestry model in Chile, which has us with the crisis we have now. When a town like Santa Olga, 1,200 homes burned down with a forest fire, and we're still waiting, and we do not make decisions that are firm to see territorial planning with scientific knowledge, that I think that the FAO can contribute a lot here. So thank you very much. Thank you, Osvaldo. Alberto?
Dr. Vicroli, Luis.
Dr. Vicroli, Luis, Maya, Duca Mesa. I'd like to mention that we briefly reflected, many comrades here, many peers, we reflected on the importance of this richness here. We're more than 16 countries, organizations, and we learn a lot one from the other. We've done many more things than what was foreseen, right? And just the assembly, the partnership, and the consultation, we go beyond that. We're trying to integrate our people, our people's culture, everything we've learned. Therefore, we value that richness. I just wanted to make a note of this, how we value it. The other thing I'd like to mention is that we share beyond. We challenge ourselves and you to create a consultation process before documents, for documents to already reflect what we think, because documents are soon to be drafted and they're about to be finished, and this is critical. I think we agree with this proposal. I'd also like to reinforce what Luis mentioned, because here, Luis said what you said. Sometimes, not in all countries, but in many countries, we discuss more with you here in Chile than the national office. It's true. So we do have to have some type of guidance. We have to open up with the national offices, have a work group, some changes in the country for the programs to be developed where people live and in the country. Here we see a relationship, and we feel quite proud of you, and I'd like to publicly acknowledge the role, Luca's role, because she's a referent, because she creates direct dialogue with you. Having a person that does that, is that liaison in our team, is very important for us. We can discuss with her. but she knows she's a person that cares for us, and that's what we wanted to value. And thank you, Duca, publicly for being this link on behalf of everyone. I'd like to thank the work that Duca does, and would like to tell you that we've had a list that's quite representative and qualified of speakers that will represent us in the conference. There'll be the speakers, the spokespeople, the spokesperson to speak in the proper moments, to influence with all those proposals that we've contributed for the conference. And we hope we can maintain this relationship. Maintain it. It's not that we'll just meet every 2 years, maybe 1, 2 times per year, to take advantage of all these events, as Stuka mentioned, to maintain this dialogue. And this nourishes us and strengthens what happens in the UN organisms. And we can strengthen each other. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alberto.
Buenos días.
Good morning,
Soy
everyone. My name is Mireya. I'm from Afimar, from Ecuador. I wanted to convey a message based on love, based on maternity, which is what the Pachamama or Mother Earth presents, the one that's producing. She is sick, she's ill, she's dying. And here, many leaders, women leaders from our different or representatives from different places have gathered, and we've brought the voice of hope. And that's what we do every time we go out. There's people behind us waiting for an answer, a response, waiting for, at some point, to become subject and not objects, not just be mere numbers, but be an active part of a change. In Ecuador specifically, there's hopelessness. We have lost, I think, all hope because farmers are truly impoverished. And we're here today, and I've heard from Mr. Luis with care, with a reconciliation message, and I'd like to thank him for that. But I would like there to be actual change at some point, specifically in Ecuador. FAO is inaccessible. Reaching or the access to the office is really, the access is very hard. So please open your doors, hear us, put yourselves at the levels of farmers that are there. They're over there. They don't have anything. They don't have a laptop. They don't have a microphone. They don't have a voice. Please hear us out. I know your work is hard, and I know that you obey to certain interests, but you're also human. We also spend like everyone. We're all here not to stay forever, right? And it's great to leave a footprint here as people and as an institution. And thank you very much to everyone for all these days of learning, of coexisting. We take back a lot of hope with us, a lot of knowledge. But we're also taking home that spirit that we have to continue fighting, raising our voices to be heard at some point. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, comrade. No, I was after. Walter. No, comrade. We have 4 minutes, okay?
Y yo iba un poco en la línea, en la reflexión hacia dentro de la FAO.
I was talking about the reflection within FAO. I'm not doubting your work. I'd also like to thank you for having this openness with civil society, as FAO said. FAO somehow responds to governments, but behind governments are people, communities, territories. And in many countries, the FAO is for the elite, just like my peer was mentioning. It's access, it's impossible, so they don't even answer emails sometimes. So we also have to see that. We have to look inside too. One moment's leader, little that the Caribbean comrade was before you, and then you'll speak, and then Cairo and him. And we close with Cairo, and please moderate your time.
Good afternoon. I too must speak on behalf of the Caribbean. And I too must recognize the contribution that Duca makes to us and to all of us. Firstly, I want to reflect on the first trip I made to Chile when there was only me. I was alone here, the only representative from the Caribbean. Today, we have 4 of us. We are making progress. However, I believe that there are some inherent issues that plague all of these organizations, all of these groupings that exist. And so we must look within ourselves and see what we can do for ourselves. That's where it begins. What can we do to help ourselves? We cannot look to FAO for all the answers, but we can ask them to pave the way for us, make the way path straight for us to move to where we need to go. But as we look at doing something for ourselves, let's see what we can do together as different groupings. And when we can bring Latin America and the Caribbean together, where we're speaking with one voice, that's when we're making progress. So today I would admonish you to simply let's look and see what we can do for ourselves as we ask FAO to help us with the things that we know we need to do. Some of you are at a place where you are being denied so much. I've listened over the years, the indigenous people, the peasants, the fisher folk, farmers. You are at a different place from some of us. In the case of the Caribbean, we have some things that you do not have. We can bring some knowledge, understanding, and appreciation to your particular case. But we just want to thank FAO for what you do for us. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Harrington. Leader.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Leader? Yesterday, I was a bit concerned due to the numbers. Today, I'm concerned about the words that, I'm sorry, what was your name, sir? Oh, ma'am, Maya. Maya says, okay, the documents are drafted. That means that our ministers are already reading these documents. They're trying to understand what the speakers have mentioned, right? And that is great, but that does not have the inputs from this consultation process. So I'm not going to go into detail, but just like to make a recommendation that for you not to make the same mistake for next time. We have come here and we spent a lot because we also put our time and our work into this. And I'm just leaving a bit sad. The consultation process ended here for me. We'd like to greet Elizabeth, Guyana, sorry. Just greet them. But for next time, for the next consultation process, when FAO generates it, please do it with time for these resources not to be wasted. I'm not rude, I'm just trying to request that. It's just a request, and also from our leaders. Just keep an eye on that, and warm greetings to everyone. Hug, and see you next time.
Kylie and Karen.
Yo. Dale.
Me? All right. Kylie, Karen, without we close, because we're on time. Right. So my objective first is to thank you and the time that you're dedicating. I really loved what the people in the Caribbean said regarding being allies. We work together, we should understand our particular context, and that is an exercise we need to put into practice, because you are also in this trench fighting, and it is a different trench to the one we live. So the 2 points I wanted to put here in the things of training that spoke that it is very good, and even say that we can collaborate a lot. So it goes both ways, and I thought, okay, maybe you can teach us more about how the processes of FAO work, so we can have clarity of where can we contribute, where can we go, because the bureaucracy sometimes makes things very difficult and we don't know what to look for. So we believe that we can think of the next one. You could maybe teach us about this process a little bit more. And people spoke about the management of materials that you produce, the scientific reports from you that are most useful as well for us to speak to other countries. And maybe we can collaborate from science and from an indigenous point of view, but a traditional look as well as to how do we see these sciences. So the reports are not just the hard data, hard science, but also indigenous science that is more humane. And the other matter is just a clarification. Just please don't, well, climate change is something that really touches me personally. It is something that has my heart invested in. I took pictures yesterday, and it was like the main results of the Red Mass program. There was an initiative supported in 12 countries, and this is how it was in the screen yesterday. Now, you said, okay, maybe you're saying that you're not supporting these type of projects, but projects of resilience, but just to understand a little bit more. Yeah, but we also need to write this down, because yesterday there was some information and today you put something else. So that's all. Thank you. I want to be very brief. Guyana, for us, it is, as far as we understand, the opportunity to nurture FAO for the first 2 years of work. And honestly, this is not the first time it happens. It always happens. We make the consultations, but all of the documents are already there. Our ministers have information, and we always ask, why do we do this for then? If what we have as a result from this consult is not going to be part where the ministers can get informed, so the governments can get informed and take into account what the civil society says, why do we even get invited then? Why do they make us participate? You know what? FAO, in one way or another, the leaders of the social movements, they turn us into a scapegoat, because the organizations, they complain to us. So why do you go there in the way? If what you discuss is not going to be taken into account, and it's not going to be part of the work program for FAO for the next 2 years, then what were you even doing there? And once again, it happens, because always it's the same thing. We make this consultation, we have all documents ready, just so we can come and get to know the agenda and the programs of work that are foreseen by FAO and the government, so we can do it for the next 2 years. But we say it's pointless, honestly. So this is a formal complaint of artisan fisheries at a level of the region and at a global level as well, that we can't continue as a social movement, as a productive sector. We can't continue. It's hard to say this. I even feel sad about saying this. We can't continue to be this instrument of manipulations of governments for these type of processes. I do complain about this, and I would love to just set the basis for this towards history. There's no tomorrow for us. For us, it is right now. The planet has serious problems of food. There's a crisis, a climate crisis. There's a lack of food, of service to the productive service, to these productive sectors. And when is what we're saying going to be discussed? So we're creating these 5 new lines, and if you review them, what we are complaining, what we're claiming is an active participation and a direct relationship with FAO and the territories. Because this thing we do here, and we do it, and not globally, it is not nationally, but it was already said so. The agenda discussed by FAO for these 2 years in the national territories is not seen, is not interacted with us. So I do want to leave a precedent here. I would love this to be part of this historic memory of this meeting, where we, at the very least, as the sector of the artisan and fisheries, because I can't speak on behalf of everyone else, we do make a formal protest to FAO and to the government. Thank you. Thank you, Cairo.
Perla, 30 segundos que vamos a cerrar.
Perla, 30 seconds because we need to wrap up. Given this last intervention by Cairo, I would like to suggest the delegates of FAO the possibility that the conclusions of this consult would be annexed to the documents that the ministers will be discussing in the framework of this conference. We know that our declaration is going to be read publicly, but we, in our group debates and everything that we were contributing, this is very rich supplies that we want to have joined to these documents. We had 2 more interventions, but if you tell me that if it's going to be 1 minute, I can give the floor to both of you. If you say 1 minute and you speak 5, so it's 2 more interventions, Helga and Martita. I particularly apologize, but I need to go pick up my daughter from school. I'm going to be 10 minutes late. I'm so sorry. She's back to school. I'll be back in the afternoon. I'm so sorry. I need to pick up my kid from school. People from Ecuador. So we have a new representative in Ecuador, our colleague Erika Sala, and we can be the bridge here, so it's more accessible then. Marta and Fernando, just one thing. It is up or down. In our countries, it's the same. Laws that are done, they call us for consultations, but they're already written. Our voice is pointless. Public policies in favor of big corporations, not for us, that feed life, but for corporations and transnational companies that feed death, the deter of our ecosystems and of our Mother Earth. That's all. Very brief. And just to highlight the importance of the space of this consult, this space for several years ago, it didn't exist, and it was won over because the civil society, because it was fought by civil society. It's not the best one, certainly. It can be improved, of course, but we didn't have nothing before. The other thing is that we speak of FAO, but the responsible people here, the responsible parties are the governments that represent all the flags here. We need to work at home, each one with their governments. They're not same. Some have better government, some have worse of government, but the big responsibles of public policies are government. Otherwise, we're saving the problem to them. We need to do this through FAO and directly to government. The spaces are there and we can always improve, but we should always acknowledge the effort of the FAO team that together with our team fought for resources to be able to be there. That's just there and it's not against any of the comments before me. Thank you.
Por favor, Rodrigo, vamos cerrando.
Please, so Rodrigo, we're closing up. We need to read our statement and we don't have enough time. So we read our statement, we have the draft, then you make your opinion for the draft, and then we're gonna run out of time and then you're not gonna be able to listen to the final statement, right? Brothers and sisters, delegates of FAO, firstly, I would like to thank for allowing me to participate in these two meetings and for these 2 days that we had that were very extensive. I would like to thank having shared with you and conveyed to you our experience and also our situation as the Mapuche people. And all of these problems that today is being caused mainly by the climate crisis, because it has really damaged our lives, like through agriculture, the indigenous ancestral one that we've always lived from. And I would like to thank because in one way or another, this has allowed me to view our situation through the different conversations and meetings that we've had with the brothers and sisters from different latitudes in the region. Also, I'd like to thank the space given by FAO in this sense. And I could be very critical here with the government even. I'm not going to be, because I am not going to tell them what they already know. But I do believe there should be more coherence with the good living that they say to develop towards our people. But there should be coherence in that, because having our people under the state of exception, with their communities being militarized, having more than 100 members of the youth imprisoned, that is a huge incoherence with good living. So that is my take-home message. Thanks to all my brothers and sisters, to the officers of FAO for this meeting, for this extra com. Marixeuel, Marixeuel, Marixeuel.
Sí, yo creo que
I believe that we're going to be thanking you for this space because you have allowed us to debate some matters. But there is a concern, and we wouldn't want to go home disappointed because I think we have been invited in the issue of the council for a dialogue, a sincere, transparent dialogue, and we've opened our hearts and we've said the situation that we're in, that we are living. So, and it's not a lie. We're living the climate change, climate crisis, poverty, migration, racism, colonialism. These are structural problems. And we're in that process. So, however, when we are opening up these spaces, we have a bit of a hope to say something, right? And in that sense, it is that the documents are already there. And because I come from International Indigenous Forum, and I need to render my reports, and I have 7 regions where we are, the 7 regions of the world where we are at. And it is that in that sense, what am I gonna say? The documents are already there. And where is this? This was sometimes our juxtapositions are not reflected. So really, I don't know. I don't know how to call this, but we feel disappointed. And I would like that it's not a personal thing, but we at the very least, this relationship with these spaces, international spaces that we have, this relationship is that we would love that FAO should be an intermediary with the states. It has been said so. What is the role of states, right? And we want them to be intermediaries in this dialogue. So a concrete proposal here is that the brothers and sisters who make up the commission somehow need to be reflected. We need to reflect the situation because afterwards they're going to say that they're going to blame us, basically, of something that we didn't do. We came over here and debated this, and I believe that the brothers and sisters from the commission are compelled to clarify the situation because they are spokespeople and they have the obligation of clarifying this situation and tell us how are we going to be included in the declaration. Something needs to be said in the declaration because otherwise we're going to be sanctioned by our own organization. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry, just very short here, 30 seconds. We as fishermen, as fisher people, it's the first time I participate, but I can understand what it means for you, for FAO, the opinion of the people, the opinions of us. I asked the people who's drafting the act, please mention that we don't want this to happen again. We have been here for 4 days, another 5 days, and leaving this with this feeling that it was for nothing. It's very sad for everyone here. But I also believe that our spokespeople, and I join the words of our partners, they have the duty of pointing this out. Because we believe that FAO, without us, is nothing. And we also need you. We need to be our spokespeople of the demands and the needs of the people. Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, we close. I just wanted to clarify something, maybe regarding the first comment. I believe that maybe I expressed myself wrong. Since yesterday, in my presentation, I've mentioned the documents that are published. These are goods to the conference. The main document, the most important document for us is the report of the conference. This is not ready. This is going to be drafted during the conference, and for that is that we need you for. That is why we need you we need your input for the declaration. You and the conference are going to be speaking with 33 countries, 33 ministers, and several delegations as well, and for that is what we're here for. I just wanted to clarify that bit because this was like this from the previous consultations. The previous consultations, what we do to 1-2 months before the conference, because why? Because we want you to have access to the goods regarding the conference, which are these documents that I just say are published. If they weren't published, maybe you wouldn't have anything to comment on because we wouldn't have anything. Now, what I'm offering now as a suggestion in this space, which is the space that you have, this is your space and you will continue to have this. And I would like to reinforce this. This is a space for preparation of the civil society towards the conference. This is an essential space for us and for you, as Alberto said so. It is essential for you because this is your space. We are here listening. What I want to offer now is another opportunity additional to this, that maybe you give us an input before we finalize the documents, and these are goods towards the conference. But I would like to reinforce this. This is not in vain. We were not here all of these days because the most important thing is that report. We can have documents and goods that can look beautiful, but if they're not reflected in these reports, they're pointless for us. The documents that is published is not guiding our program. What guides us is the report of the conference. So I need you to understand that. The accountability that you mentioned, the monitoring, based on this document of this report that is going to be developed in the conference. It is not an FAO document. The report is not by FAO. The report is by countries in a consultation with civil society. So it's not us who do this. The documents published here are technical documents. Technical. Regarding resilience and the situation of food security, these are technical documents with numbers. We want to warn governments about the situation taking place in the countries now. That is our role. If we can get more input before, even better, because we can provide better context. But the most important thing is, and please, I want you that you take your role home and have a lot of clarity on it. For us, this is the most important document. The more participative it is, the more participation we get in it, for us, the better. This thing you said here, we want the governments to listen to, and we want them to have this reflected in the report. Second, this issue of anticipating this, we leave this to your consideration because there is a cost. There is some time that you dedicate to this. And for us, it will be interesting to have that as well. But I also wanted to say that it is not that these documents don't consider your contribution. Why? Because there's several processes on consultation throughout the year of the decade of family agriculture, of the voluntary guidelines, of co-op, of the preparation of co-ops, of the preparations also of the accountabilities to the SDGs. All of these we have process of permanent consultations that we don't have it. It's not that we're here just now having this dialogue. This reflects as much as what we say it's true. We have some total guidelines in what you're speaking, in what we as managers, as the technical officers who are responsible of these areas, we think of. Because what you say is the reality. What we need to do now is to make this reality and have it well reflected in the technical documents that we're drafting. That is what I wanted to say. Thank you, Maya. Anyways, we know that we are expressing our feelings based on what we have seen, but we also know that we have a process and we know why we're here and the process and what it took to get us here. Also, we'd like to thank the officers of the FAO for joining us and for hosting our feelings, and also so they can also understand the part of the civil society, the fishing sectors, and the collectors, and everyone here in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you so much. And having said this, we would like to read the draft of our consultation and the declaration so you can listen to it and we can know what can we give inputs in so strengthen our declaration for the next step on the next level.
Paola, Nemo, por favor.
Paola Nemo, please.
Bueno, ya buenas tardes.
Well, good afternoon. We have been creating this document since yesterday.
Hay video bien para proyectar al Zoom. Lo hemos enviado al grupo.
Okay, we've sent it to the group already, and I've sent it to Marcela's email address for her to collaborate in presenting the document. Okay. As Marcela arrives and presents this, I would like to comment that this was the first draft of our declaration. It is not the final draft. The idea is for us to be able to talk about this a bit, but we're taking all your input with us to include all your ideas and reflections. And just for us to have clarity on the scope of the exercise we'll do now with the declaration, we have to send the declaration to FAO on March the 3rd. In that regard, we are going to rapidly send you the update of the document as soon as possible for you to approve, but we cannot go beyond March the 3rd. That's why it's, or exceed March the 3rd. That's why it's important when you read this and make your comments, it's important that in this document has a maximum extension and it's not possible to make it that long. So we will have to work a lot to summarize. So we can just write down the best ideas possible, right? Because we need to put down the collective ideas. I know that many of you want to put specific details, but this is a wide and political document where language has to just be brief, and the maximum extension, I understand, is 2 pages. They told us, I think. And we've been reducing an 8-page document to 3 pages. So it's just for us to, it's worth noting that we must continue shrinking this document. So within all the contributions that would help us is, or your input where you feel included, but not just try not to sum anything up, just try to summarize your ideas and feel represented in the document. While Marcela comes, I don't know if I can start reading while, in the meanwhile. Just to add to Paola, we've been working some days here. Can you hear me now? Okay. I just wanted to add to what Paola mentioned. I'd like to inform that we've been working a couple of days here already, and we tried to include all the demands and elements, priority elements for us as a civil society in this declaration, okay? So we have the document here on screen, and we will start reading the declaration. Civil society organizations of Latin America and the Caribbean and their declaration, consultation process to the civil society. On the 38th conference, regional conference of FAO for Latin America and the Caribbean on February 28 and 29, 2024, preparing for the 38th regional conference of the FAO LARC 38, we gathered with family, farmers, rural population, fishermen, consumers, small fishermen, First Nations, Afro-descendants, different farmers, women, the youth, and urban popular movements, which through decades we have combated and struggled through food sovereignty and better life conditions in territories to eradicate hunger, food insecurity, and inequality. Considering that in our region more than 40 million people are in hunger and 180 million are in a situation of poverty, inequalities increase with multiplied crises. There's deeper conflicts due to land, water, territory changes, maritime and land, the loss of biodiversity, the effects of climate change, marginalization of peoples, and the lack of health. These systemic dynamics profoundly affect, or deeply affect our knowledge, agricultural practices, and our fishing practices, the methods of preservation, restoration of the environment, food sovereignty, the sustainability of life and territories. If fake solutions or false solutions presented by corporation and corporate capture do not solve the problem, the hunger problems, malnourishment, and the effects of climate change. On the contrary, they deepen inequalities, they sicken the planet, and with that, they sicken or make ill those that inhabit it. In addition, the corporate capture of states and multilateral organisms marginalize our participation and voice in decision-making on our lives and territories. In the face of these scenarios, the stakeholders and civil society organizations declared to the FAO, ministers of state, and high-level officers of member countries the following. In terms of efficient, inclusive, and sustainable production, we demand the state the decisive support and prioritization of strategies focused towards agroecological transition, the fostering of production, supply, and marketing, trading of healthy food free from agrochemicals and additives, for promoting healthy nutritional diets, along with the strengthening of popular knowledge, popular economy, and ancestral knowledge. To end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, we demand more political will and public budget to materialize hunger liberation policies, producing information and data that are relevant, that foster and protect the advocacy and defense of the peoples, to promote trade and the fair prices for food that advance towards taxation justice or legal justice, and advancing on legal and technical frameworks focused on food sovereignty. In the face of the farmers and cross-cutting women, youth issues, and the decade of family farming, we would like to request FAO and the states the immediate making up of national committees of family farming and the implementation of national plans of action for sustainable rural development and the right to feeding to food. These plans must be constructed and implemented with diverse social participation without interference of the industry, ensuring the rights of access to tenure and governance of land, water, forests, territories, both the coastal and maritime territories, with safeguarding the common goods for food sovereignty of the people, ensuring free, prior, and informed consent. In addition, advancing on differentiated policies for protecting native seeds that are not subject to the application of any type of intellectual property. On the other hand side, to encourage and promote climate funding, technical assistance that add value, government acquisitions and purchases, and the trading or marketing of agriculture, fishing, and livestock production with an agroecological intersectional with a gender-based and generational approach. The states and the FAO must recognize care at the core of the reproduction of life, considering the protagonist role of women and the youth as allies in the design and implementation of public policies and countries' decision-making processes. This means we should have training processes and specific budgets. In order to reduce inequalities and rural poverty and to strengthen resilience, we drive and encourage the states that with the support of the FAO, they implement inequality reduction policies and poverty reduction policies, considering diversity and interculturality. Creation of tools for developing capacities based on food sovereignty, the investment in associations and cooperatives, and the extension of the percentage of women and youth in decision-making. In turn, free trade agreements must be reviewed to ensure safeguarding the productive economic, cultural, and environmental practices of the people from the farms, the forestry, and the seas. We consider that regional governance must be a priority due to its strategic importance, and we request the FAO and the states the creation of a regional follow-up mechanism that is participatory, multi-sectorial, that is permanent for food governance, with the mission of decision-making along with the owners of rights of the different sectors and peoples without any conflicts of interest from our region, to analyze the compliance of the regional initiatives where organizations, civil society organizations contribute to the follow-up and monitoring of the actions and public policies, producing data and information that is relevant for all the countries, to extend alliances or partnership for political dialogue for the regional initiatives and the national policies, to recognize the role and the contributions of people in the sectors that are represented herein, just like including their experiences, practices, sciences, and traditional and ancestral knowledge. We would like to tell the states to comply the instruments, covenants, and commitments assumed at a national and international level, specifically in the framework on human rights, like the implementation of the UN Decade for Family Agriculture, family farming, the guidelines for fishing and small-scale fishing and aquaculture, and the Decade on the Restoration of Ecosystems, the chart on the rights of farmers and other people in rural areas, the voluntary guidelines for governance of land, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, ILO Convention 169, and other international instruments that ensure the rights to our people. We demand data governance that ensures the right to food with the use of digital technologies that are accessible, with accessibility, inclusion, and participation, that recognizes farmers, First Nations, and other small producers of food and consumers, including women, as owners of rights over the data that they generate and all the linked knowledge, just like permanent training processes and access to technological innovations with cultural relevance, considering the protection of property, intellectual property of people, their sciences, agroecology, and ancestral knowledge. Last but not least, civil society organizations. We restate our commitment to continue collaborating in the construction of instruments for political solution that ensure the rights of the people of Latin America and the Caribbean, preserve our territories and common goods with specific and concrete actions for the reduction of poverty, hunger, and inequalities in our region. Nevertheless, we request the FAO that civil society organizations have an impact in the report, and that this organization, sorry, I skipped something. Nevertheless, we request FAO and that civil society organizations impact the creation of the report of the 38th Regional Conference of the FAO, and this organization has our contributions, counts with all of our contribution in the implementation and creation process of the regional priorities of the FAO. That is it for us, comrades and peers, and that is our draft for the declaration. I'd like to reinforce the fact that we have 2 or 3 days to receive your contributions. And we're now going to open the floor for some interventions from our peers that are here. The floor is open. Leader? Okay, thank you. Yesterday, FAO collected and accepted, but today our comrade did not collect our information. Here we have our other comrade, the great Chilean leader, and she is a collector. And we still see, and please go to the first point on top. Every day we've said and we've insisted, the FAO already considered this yesterday, but you, please, if you could go to the first point. Number 1, the first paragraph is the first one is, we start from there, right? You have not gathered, you have not included the collectors. They're still being marginalized. Please write it down for, please, in the first one on top, before, right there, and please write it down for everyone else to see that this is now written down. The rural population. Please put collectors, both male and female, and small scale fisheries, right? And I'm not going to insist on this again, but please do not delete this. But yes, if you continue reading the document, well, anyway, you need to visualize what's on top, not just leave farmers, First Nations, no, collectors and fishermen. You always have to keep collectors and fishermen because it's a way in which we can visualize in our documents. The FAO already visualized this, right? And we do not give them the opportunity, despite the fact that we're clear. Please, I'm begging you, I'm not going to ask again, but please include collectors. Thank you.
Compañero líder, acá el compañero, luego la compañera, luego ahí, y Alberto.
Thanks, Alberto.
Hello, ahora.
Hello. I would like to request the following, something very similar that we did before in the meeting that we had in the school, in the Association of Professors. 2 small paragraphs. I would like to greet the greeting of the fight of the Mapuche people for the recovery of the landed territory and demand the exit of the extractivist companies from the territory. With that, I believe it will be very important for us, and we really appreciate that you do so.
En el punto donde hablamos de planes nacionales de
Where we spoke about national plans of action of rural sustainable development.
Ahí, ahí. Yo colocaría
I would write national plans of rural sustainable development that is solidary, healthy, sustainable, rural. sustainable rural development that is healthy and solid and humane. When we talk about people, we talk about the people from the farms, the sea, and the forest, and we forget the people that live in rivers. In Brazil, we say ribeirinhos. So put farms, forests, rivers, and seas, because in Brazil we have a lot of populations in the rivers.
Sí, en la segunda página, el segundo
Second page, second paragraph, second line, it says family, small farming. We need to put indigenous farming, fishermen and women, and collectors. Decennium. There. Third one is National Committees for Family Agriculture, indigenous and collectors. And another point that we need to mention, as Osvaldo also mentioned, is the issue of Palestine. We can't be quiet with what is happening in Palestine. This is genocide and needs to be mentioned. And indigenous. And from there, fishermen, women, collectors, and you said artisan fishermen, small fisher practices.
Permiso, denme 2 minutitos. Regresé a la moderación y disculpen mi ausencia. Necesitaba salir un minuto.
I am so sorry, I need to exit the room for a minute. Partners, we have a declaration that is 3 pages long. We need to understand that when we go to the official one, we are given 5 minutes. 5 minutes for a declaration is practically 1 page. We need to know what do we need precisely that the state or the present governments, what do we need them to host from us? Because if we reflect some things that are important, because everything matters, there's things that we need to also reflect here. Second, we are at the time of the closing. We have people who are here virtually, and there's going to be a point where we need to close. And what's recommendable here is that you send your inputs via WhatsApp so we can include in the best possible way everything that we need. We need to reflect a lot here, but we need to know that reflecting this is not all going to be possible to be heard. We know how the states and governments are, so if anything, they're going to listen to the first bit. And they're going to have us speak 15 minutes. We're going to have such few minutes. Please send your inputs, because in a few minutes we need to close up the virtual meeting, and there's going to be an announcement, and we're going to be closing up the online transmission, and those who are in the room are going to stay here with some considerations that we have to mention to you. Having said this, we give the floor to the person that's the floor now. Please, my apologies, 1 minute. I think of methodology here. We have 10 more minutes with interpreting for everyone who's from the Caribbean. So the suggestion is that you will just add what you think it's missing or needs to be adjusted, and that another time we do the adjustment of the text of the declaration. Thank you very much. So an observation here where we see that we request the revision of the free trade agreement. So we give some clarity here about that we should add a letter saying food sovereignty, how the free trade agreements are affected with food sovereignty. It is there, but it doesn't say food sovereignty. And the other thing is, one of our things, we always talk about food security does not help much in a paragraph that is part of this. So I would ask if we could change food sovereignty then. Hello. In the list of the documents of the agreements, we need to have the voluntary guidelines of gender empowering of women and girls that don't show up in the document. In the point where we speak about the effect of the climate change, maybe change towards the impact of the climate crisis. So maybe stress this further. And where we speak about solidarity economy, what was it? Popular economy, and we put popular economy and territorial economy, just that.
Yo mi aporte que iba a hacerlo ya lo hizo Carol, pero quería proponer lo
Carol
siguiente.
did it, but I wanted to propose the following thing. FAO gave us some guideline of how things are doing. Maybe we should agree that in each country, we are going to be providing our declaration to the ministers of agriculture so they can have it and they know it.
Yo no lo sabía. Fiquei
10 seconds. I didn't know that. I just found out now that, what are you saying? That you told me there's 5 permanent groups in FAO just for governments, fisheries, artisan fisheries, Atlantic fishing. So maybe we should have a paragraph to say that civil societies, the consultation suggested by FAO suggests the participation also of these committees that are only government, and this is how we define the government. So thank you so much. So we're going to be listening to the 2 people, and then we give the floor to Lorena for the closing of the session. One concern, thank you about the effort, is it is hard to summarize this. The declaration should have a consideration, and especially most of it should be the recommendation. That should be the most substantial part. So we need to really summarize this and turn this into a recommendation, because there's a lot of considerations and there's also a repetition. My apologies, but it is true that we need to summarize to have 1.5 pages so they can read it. Because let's not forget, reading fast, since there's interpreters to the different languages, you lose a lot. So we need this to be read in a paused, strong way so we can allow the interpreters to keep up. So 1.5 pages we should be aiming for. Yeah, that's my proposal as well. And I also think I sent some notes to the group. Maybe we should check it because it's about reorganizing some other proposals there. So we should take that into account. And that is my proposal. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go now to Lorena for the closing of the session. Partners, my name is Lorena Ortiz. As a woman in fishing, it's an honor and responsibility to be in representation of more than 20 organizations and continental and global movements. We represent millions of producers in the region, men and women, fishermen and women, collectors, farmers, family farmers, shepherds, beekeepers, indigenous people that here, as always, we're open to dialogues. We are the primary sector that produces food and feeds the peoples of the world. Today, we are hearing the 4 regional priorities of FAO. First, efficient production, inclusive production, and sustainable production. Second, end of hunger and the achievement of food security and nutrition. Third, sustainable management of natural resources and adaptation to climate change. Fourth, reduction of inequalities and poverty and promotion to this resistance. Our proposal, it is the key priority to establish a mechanism for governance that will strengthen the mandate of FAO to guarantee better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life. We reinforce that agroecology is the solution that guarantees food sovereignty for our peoples in sea and land. It is of the utmost importance that the states will guarantee that we can continue producing under our own strategies and ways of producing, since it is us the main keepers of our natural resources, guaranteeing thus food sovereignty. That is why we continue strengthening this alliance, adding new organizations so we together can continue with the transformation of agri-food system, being necessary to have funding to strengthen ourselves in our actions, particularly speaking in the training and formation. So we need public policies that are built with food producers. Without us, there's no true solutions. Food sovereignty or now. Thank you, Lorena, for your intervention. We read the declaration, send your inputs. We're going to gather them so we can continue editing them, summarizing them, and putting the important points here for the declarations that we have. We want to thank all of the ones who are connected via Zoom, on YouTube, and to everyone who's present here. And we will thank everyone who's here. And those who are in the room, please stay in the room. Now we are closing our transmissions. Thanks everyone who is here.